Chapter 241. It was necessary to maintain good rest and a good diet. In the last cross-country race on the second day, some of the horses were unable to participate because of their condition. As a result, their total points were greatly reduced, and they had no chance to participate in the Olympics. When Yolashanda heard the news, he felt sorry for the other party and was also worried. Fortunately, he had a good rest yesterday. In order to let him sleep well, Jia Sang even used the fascia gun to help him relax his muscles. Speaking of which, Jia Sang had only learned how to use it recently. The person who taught him how to use it was his senior, Shuai Lai. He was very grateful to Shuai Lai for this trip to France. If it wasn't for Shuai Lai, Jia Sang would not have been able to imagine what would have happened. The weather in France in May was good. The slightly hot sun shone on the body, adding a hint of anxiety to the serious, intense atmosphere. Seeing that the horsemen were either thrown off by the horses or did not pass the obstacles, everyone felt that the three equestrian events must be ranked according to their difficulty. The third event was the most difficult. Fu Siyu had lost a lot of points on the obstacles. When he came back, he shook his head at his teammates. No wonder so many horsemen and horses had lost points. This time, it was indeed difficult. He was not looking for excuses for himself. Based on his experience, Qin immediately adjusted his strategy. However, he couldn't have his cake and eat it too. He had tried his best to avoid the obstacles and lost points, so he couldn't avoid losing points on the time. He did not lose a lot of points. When he exceeded the time limit by 15 seconds, the judge deducted 15 points. The coaches quickly added up the total points. Then, everyone's gaze fell on Jia Sang and Yolashanda. Their expressions were complicated. "I'm sorry, Jia Sang. You have a lot of work to do now." Fu Siyu and Qin and both patted Jia Sang's shoulders guiltily. Who knew that this cross-country race will be so crazy? Luckily, everyone's scores were not that good. Jia Sang, you don't have to feel too pressured. Just maintain your standard. I don't think it will be a big problem. Qin was a veteran, so he was still calm. He did not want to give Jia Sang any pressure. "All right, don't worry. I'll be fine." Jia Sang nodded solemnly. Seeing that he was a little nervous, the other coaches immediately interrupted and looked at Shuai Lai. The route this time is indeed a little difficult. I wonder how Shuai Lai would have played this game. Coincidentally, Shuai Lai had just finished studying the field and was about to say a few words to Jia Sang, who was inexperienced. Hearing this, he said, "Since everyone's results are terrible, just maintain your normal standards. You don't have to force yourself to get a high score." It was really a standard answer. Thinking about it carefully, he couldn't find any fault with it. Coach Lee went crazy in his mind. "Bullish asterisk T, you are not that kind of person." Moderation and seeking stability had nothing to do with Shuai Lai. The reason why he said that was probably for the good of Jia Sang. Shuai Lai has grown up. Coach Lee felt a sense of relief. "Do you understand?" This sentence was directed at his junior brother. Jia Sang looked at him. "Huh, yes." He understood. Jia Sang's eyes lit up. He understood what his senior brother meant. Seek stability. Don't force yourself to get a high score. He understood, but his horse didn't. Yolashanda had been taught a lesson yesterday. Don't be lazy. Don't get 60 points. Don't waste any more points. Be a good horse and be positive. Anyway, everyone was reminding Jia Sang, and no one was watching him. Ao Daisai understood the human's plan, but he also remembered that Coach Lee had scolded Little Bear. If he lost points this time, he might be scolded again when he came back. He might not even be given candy. Jia Sang's coach, senior brother, or team member, fight steadily. Don't force yourself. Yolashanda's backer, Ao Daisai, charge. Finally, it was Yolashanda and the rider's name. Shuai Lai, who was wearing a baseball cap, nodded at his junior brother reservedly. "Go ahead." Under everyone's gaze, Jia Sang mounted his horse and left. In the first round of the competition, he had dressed his horse in a fancy way. In the last round of the competition, he had dressed his horse in a completely different style. Everything was for the convenience of the competition. Yolashanda's 2 rows of fried dough twists extended from his head to his shoulders. Today, he had the clean and neat style of a tough guy. He was like a whirlwind as soon as he appeared. No matter how you looked at it, he didn't seem to be aiming for stability. The humans couldn't help but worry. Jia sang, "Control your horse. Stay steady." A good rider must control his own rhythm. Jia sang understood this. However, when he tried to ask Yolashanda for control, he was rejected. When the white horse climbed up the first hill like a whirlwind and leaped over the first obstacle, its hooves fell into the shallow water. It looked like it was galloping on the grassland. Everyone knew that he was not destined for stability. This horse would either succeed or fail miserably. However, it seemed that he had made a good start. His first jump received warm applause and cheers from the audience. The national team's hearts were in their mouths. "Damn," Jia sang, "I didn't expect you to be so wild." The coach was furious. "Didn't we say we were going for stability?" They had already thought of how to educate Jia sang after the competition. However, it was obviously not the time to think about this. Their minds were firmly focused on the competition. When this group of people jumped over 3 obstacles in a row and got 0 penalty points, all the people watching the live broadcast stood up. After watching the competition for so long, the China team was crazy. The young contestant did not have much racing experience. He could be said to be an unfamiliar face. However, he and his horse immediately gained a large number of fans in a short period of time. The fans even came up with a slogan for him: "Although we are young, we are wild." The China team had always been playing steadily and had rarely made mistakes. This was very good. They had the style of a great general. However, when a reckless young contestant appeared, it was also very exciting. It injected a different kind of vitality into the national team. Seeing little Jia sang and his horse rushing forward with all their might, rushing over obstacle after obstacle, with more energy each time, like a solar engine, all the fans were boiling with excitement. "Fans, little Jia sang is a man of our grassland. It's so exciting to see him riding a horse. Let the foreigners see. Go!" In this competition, Jia sang and Yolashanda had aroused everyone's pride. When Jia sang knew that things had gone out of control, he was completely unable to control the rhythm. He calmly adjusted himself. At least under the surveillance, he could not show that he did not agree with his horse. The little white horse became manic. Jia sang was driven by it and felt his blood boiling. In the next second, he squeezed the horse's abdomen with his knees, and his whole body was brought to the highest point by the white horse. When he landed, he quickly adjusted his posture. Shock absorption. The video captured the scene of a group of people and horses jumping. There was a close-up and commentary at the side. It was shocking that the horse's body was leaning towards a vertical line at this moment. This difficult move was successfully challenged. After landing smoothly, Yolashanda's 4 hooves easily stepped on the 3-meter-long obstacle board and came to a low point. This was where many horses lost points. It was a difficult problem to jump accurately and without losing points. It required the rider and the horse to have foresight. Yolashanda had lived in the wild for so long that he had long discovered this terrain. He ran to a suitable position and began to jump. A perfect parabola was easily crossed. In order to show his victory, he deliberately wagged his tail twice. This horse's ease was fully demonstrated. It greatly calmed the hearts of the people. It turned out that Yolashanda's previous few jumps were not explosive. He was still confident that he could complete the rest of the route. The coach and his companions clenched their fists and relaxed. It was their ticket to the Olympic Games. Victory was in their hands. Fu Siyu and Qin looked at each other. These 2 old and young generals saw the encouragement in each other's eyes. Jia sang's participation might bring new motivation to them. Not only would it bring glory to the country, but it would also bring about a breakthrough from the inside out. After this Olympic Games, they had to think about their future. Shuai raised his hand to block the sunlight. His eyes followed the figures of Jia sang and the white horse on the big screen. There was a slight change in his eyes. He knew that Jia sang had a little beast living in his heart. He was not the kind of obedient child that everyone thought him to be. Jia sang's rebellion made senior brother Genius think of himself in the past. His lips curled into a smile. As for Ao Daisai had already run away. He was alone outside the field, chasing after Yolashanda. The people standing on both sides of the field saw his appearance and very kindly made way for him. Occasionally, they could not help but be touched by him. Ao Daisai was not in the mood to care about it. At this moment, Ao Daisai was like a parent sending his child to a competition. Everyone was concerned about whether his child could fly high, but he only cared about whether the little bear was tired. Suddenly, there was a new change in the field. Not sure if it was because Yulashanda's movements were too wild, the wrist guard on his left front hoof fell off. Fortunately, it did not trip him when it fell off. He continued to run forward. It was not a big deal for the wrist guard to fall off, but it could not be taken lightly. The coach and team members in front of the big screen frowned. They were very worried about the last part of the race. Yulashanda must be okay. Fortunately, the fall of a wrist guard did not have any impact on the people and horses in the field. They still finished the last part of the race smoothly. The announcer was slightly excited. The first group of people to get 0 penalty points was announced. However, because they passed the race on time, they did not get any bonus points. However, it was already very impressive that they did not get any penalty points. The live audience and the audience outside the field clapped their hands so hard that their palms hurt. Smiles filled the faces of the people. The Asian Equestrian Triathlon Olympic trials had successfully ended. The national team that went to France returned with a brilliant result. The media present had already thought of the headline, but at this moment, the short few minutes belonged to Jia Sang and his Yulashanda. The announcer repeated several times, Jia Sang and Yulashanda. Shuelai clapped his hands. Just as he expected, from now on, these two names would frequently appear in major competitions and become the focus of everyone's attention. As usual, the teenager bent down and kissed his horse to express his gratitude to his partner. When he returned to the field, he immediately rushed to his senior who was standing in front of him after he dismounted. Shuelai hugged his junior's thin body and felt that he was trembling slightly. He was very considerate and did not expose this embarrassing scene. He only said in a low voice, "Congratulations on getting the ticket to the Olympics." Jia sang, "Yes." When he looked up again, the teenager's eyes were red and his voice was slightly choked. Yulashanda and Ao Daisai both stood at the back and bathed in the eager gazes from all directions. This feeling is so good. Wait, Coach Lee looked over. Yulashanda suddenly felt guilty. She picked up her reins and said, "Ao Daisai, let's go, let's go." Coach Lee originally wanted to come over and teach the white horse a lesson, but he found that it seemed to be slightly limping. Suddenly, he only felt sorry for it and said, "Thank you for your hard work." The wrist guard was indeed useful. Who tied the wrist guard? Coach Lee decided that in the future, the wrist guard would be strictly checked by himself. Now, he would take the horse back to recuperate. The author has something to say. Don't worry, the little bear is faking it. Thank you everyone for the nutrient solution. I will continue to write tomorrow. Chapter 242. Because of the pain in his feet, Alisanda received a lot of attention. Everyone surrounded him. Tashi Sang, who had put the wrist guard on Alisanda, found out that the wrist guard had fallen off when his horse was running. He immediately blamed himself. But it was not entirely his fault. The other racehorses were used to wearing wrist guards since they were young, but Yulashanda only got used to it recently. He always felt that it was too restrictive, so he did not want Jia Sang to tie it too tightly. It would affect his running speed, so he was also at fault for the wrist guard falling off. Moreover, his leg was not injured at all. He felt guilty when he saw Jia Sang going crazy for him. Yes, he felt guilty too. After the examination, the doctor said, "It's okay. Maybe he just did some strenuous exercise and pulled a muscle. He'll be fine after some rest." Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Ao Daisai was very calm, because he already knew that little bear was faking it. His calmness inevitably caused Shuelai to mutter, "Don't you like him a lot? You're not worried about his leg injury?" After saying that, he felt that he was being unreasonable. Ao Daisai was just a horse. Forget it. No matter how smart he was, he would not be like a human being. Even if Shuelai did not admit it, he had already regarded the white horse as an existence that was second only to Ao Daisai. He silently prayed for the white horse's injury. Yilashanda, whose hooves were wrapped in bandages, enjoyed the attention of the crowd. When all the teams finished competing and the rankings were announced, they saw the 5-star red flag at the top of the list. China's team entered the Olympics with dazzling results. Next year, they would meet the world. The team members were awarded flowers and recognition for being shortlisted. They took photos with everyone on the field. First, they took photos with the organizers, then other teams from other countries, and China's own team members. Of course, horses would participate in every photo. They were fully deserving of being the main characters. In the end, there would be fans who would come up to ask for a group photo. Most of them wanted to take a group photo with Zazen and Alexander. The little general and the young white horse from the grassland were in the limelight today. The media in China had already started to report on this matter. The reporters at the scene kept sending photos and videos back. The sports world was full of joy and peace. Fans kept coming up to him. Alexander was also very happy to see them standing beside him and taking photos. He even made all kinds of funny expressions to cooperate with them. However, he was soon pulled away because everyone was still worried about his leg injury. Xiao Qi. I'm injured. I can still take photos. After the brief interlude of taking photos, he had already forgotten which leg he was lame on. Fortunately, it was bandaged. Otherwise, the risk of being exposed would have been great. The coaches had promised that if all of them qualified, they would be given a good holiday and they would not be mistreated. On the way back to the ground, the team members began to discuss among themselves. When the coach said that he would not mistreat them, did he mean Zhuoliuli? Was it just a simple holiday? Coach, the team members, what's the point? Eat hot pot in France if you dare. Originally, all of them were going to go back immediately. They were still waiting for their debut in China. But didn't Yilashanda hurt his leg? So they decided to rest here for 2 days. Shuelai took the initiative to treat everyone and took them to the streets of France. France had hot pot, but France had snails. In the dining room, Jia Sang saved his portion of sugar cubes, wrapped them in a tissue, and secretly put them into his pocket. Shuelai saw this and gave him a share. The other party asked him, "Do you want me to give it to Ao Daisai?" The young master shook his head generously. "Give it to Yilashanda. I hope he gets better quickly after eating the sugar." Okay, Jia Sang was very touched. However, it was just a few sugar cubes. Alexander stayed in France for 2 days, eating and drinking, and then was sent on a plane back home. Unlike when they were going to France, the airport was very calm. They could feel it even before they got off the plane. There were reporters and a reception team at the airport. This treatment was really good. Yilashanda limped 2 steps, probably because he was used to pretending to be a cripple. How could this be? No matter how much Ao Daisai indulged him, he couldn't let him mess around. He reminded him, "That's enough. The video won't look good when you're limping." Little Bear Ling immediately straightened his limbs. In late May, the team members who returned to China were interviewed one after another. Then they went on vacation. During the vacation, Jia Sang wanted to go home. However, he definitely couldn't bring his horse with him. It was too expensive to transport it, so he went back alone. "Senior, are you going home to revise?" Because he couldn't let go of his horse, Jia Sang boldly went to Shuelai and asked, "Can you bring Yilashanda too? I can't bear to leave him alone at the base." Everyone was on vacation, so the base was cold and empty. Jia Sang's request was no doubt a pillow sent to Shuelai. He was worried that Ao Daisai wouldn't go back. He thought that he could only leave Ao Daisai in the national team before the college entrance exam. Suddenly, he thought that things would take a turn for the better. Of course, he immediately agreed and promised his junior that he would take good care of Yilashanda. Jia Sang was very grateful. He counted with his fingers the date of his return. It seemed to be the days when his senior would take the exam. His eyes lit up, and he said, "Then when senior takes the exam, you can send Ao Daisai over. I'll take care of him for senior." That seemed feasible. Ao Daisai would be very happy when the time comes. Shuelai thought in annoyance. As the team members left one by one, the atmosphere of parting filled the stable. Yilashanda couldn't even lift his spirits in front of the delicious food. He couldn't bear to leave Ao Daisai. "Don't worry, I won't leave," Ao Daisai solemnly promised. He wanted to stay by Yulashanda's side. It seemed that little yellow fur's reluctance had no effect on him. Okay, Yulashanda knew that Ao Daisai wouldn't leave. But when he saw everyone leave, he missed the liveliness from before. Yulashanda was very happy to become a horse and feel the liveliness of the world again. After all, he had once protected this country. Ao Daisai didn't have any special feelings for this country. But this was Little Bear's country. He would love this country as much as he loved Little Bear. Soon, there was good news. Before Jia Sang left, he had entrusted them to Shuelai. When he heard that Yulashanda was also leaving, Ao Daisai was finally willing to step onto the truck. Because the truck was very spacious, there was more than enough space for 2 horses to stand. Ao Daisai moved to the side to make more space for Yulashanda. Everyone saw such a protective action. Now, the whole base knew, oh no, the whole country knew, that Ao Daisai and Yulashanda were good friends. Their little story in France had already spread to the whole world. A horse that followed a friend overseas to watch a horse race. What a cute piece of news. Yulashanda felt that he couldn't bully Ao Daisai like this. He quickly said, "You can stand closer. You don't have to squeeze yourself so hard." "It's not hard." Ao Daisai remembered that Yulashanda had been airsick in the cabin the last time. He just wanted to give him more space to move around. Fortunately, the journey back to Shuelai's house was not far. The whole journey only took about 2 hours. It was a large grassland in the suburbs. It was all man-made. It was said that this was Shuelai's ancestral home very, very early on. Of course, the house was now very modern. After getting off the truck, Ao Daisai couldn't wait to bring Little Bear to see the place where he usually moved around. The real owner of this house had already been forgotten by them. If Shuelai was depressed at first, then after seeing the backs of the 2 horses moving together harmoniously, he felt a little moved. Isn't this a beautiful story? Young Master Shui picked up his camera and slowly followed behind the 2 horses. He took a vlog of Ao Daisai entertaining his friend, and then added cute captions. Ao Daisai showed Yulashanda his grassland. Ao Daisai showed Yulashanda his stable. Ao Daisai showed Yulashanda his bathroom, screening room, and so on. He just used his own account to post a video and complain that he had been forgotten by the 2 horses. However, he didn't expect that this vlog would become the most feedback he had received since he registered his personal account in China. Jia Sang still had a personal account. If fans wanted to see the recently popular Jia Sang and Yulashanda, they could only follow the official account of the national team and search through the compilation videos to see Jia Sang and Yulashanda. Senior brother is a good person. He gave everyone such a long life walk. The protagonists were the black and white horses. It almost recorded what they did in the day. Everyone loved this form of recording. Ao Daisai entertaining his friend. So cute. I've been following Ao Daisai since the master competition. He's so handsome and cool. I thought he would have friends. Ha ha ha. This living environment, this living conditions, it's so sour. Ao Daisai is so rich. I won't call him Ao Daisai anymore. It's obviously President Ao. From the moment I saw Ao Daisai, I knew he wasn't a normal horse. Sure enough, his family is rich. Yulashanda grew up in the grassland. Is this the story of a country boy and a rich man's son? Ha, that's true. I'm so envious of Yulashanda. He has such a cool, handsome, and rich friend. Does the future world champion care about this? Everyone, there are many rich and powerful families, but there's only one world champion. So this was a friendship of equal social status. Senior, please continue to update your vlog. Shuelai's Chinese was good, but he didn't like to read the comments. Hence, he didn't know that his countrymen were already thinking about the world champion. The reason why he continued to update the 2 horses' beautiful life in his house was mainly to show Jia Sang. Today, the young master personally prepared a sumptuous afternoon tea for the 2 horses. He felt that he couldn't ignore the fruits of his labor, so he recorded a second vlog. Yulashanda happily ate strawberries sprinkled with sugar, covered with milk ice cream. Oh, at the end, there were a few pieces of green vanilla. The little white horse licked the vanilla stuck to the glass bowl with the tip of its tongue. It was as serious as a master on a bridge. The handsome and cool black horse pushed the glass bowl with half of its ice cream to the next door. At this point, the bullet screen was filled with jealousy. After all, everyone wanted to have such a handsome and considerate friend. The author has something to say. 8 p.m., 2 p.m. Chapter 243. A.O. Daisai was a very disciplined horse. Every morning, it would get up and run. Even though it liked sweets, it would not eat until it was full. Shuelai did not spend any effort to raise A.O. Daisai. This was also the main reason why Shuelai could take care of A.O. Daisai by himself. However, everything had changed since Yolashanda came. First of all, the workload of taking care of the horse had increased exponentially. Cleaning, preparing food, cleaning the stables, and the messy scenes created by Yolashanda playing around the house. This was not something that Yolashanda could control. Unless he did not move, it would be inevitable. Moreover, he had asked A.O. Daisai before, would this cause any trouble? A.O. Daisai said no. He would just treat it as if it was his own house. There was no need to be so reserved. Since it was his own house, Qiao Qishi would not be so reserved. Just think about how he was in the grasslands and how he was here. Blondie, who still had to revise for the college entrance examination, thought, "You win?" In the evening, the alarm clock rang. It was time to prepare food for the two horses. Shuelai left the questions that he was halfway through. With the help of the servants, he prepared 3 times more food than usual. He had to admit that ever since the white horse came to visit, A.O. Daisai's appetite had also increased. Was it really so happy to be in love? Even his appetite had improved. For years of care and companionship could not compare to a white horse that he had only met for less than 3 months. Shuelai felt that it was unfair. Thus, he secretly tried to find Yolashanda's shortcomings. There were too many. For example, he was lazy and gluttonous. He never took the initiative to run in the morning. Now that he finally got up, he would drag A.O. Daisai down. It was ridiculous. That was not even running. It was called walking and stopping. The cart carrying the food arrived. The wheels of the cart made a rumbling sound on the road. Yolashanda, who was playing with A.O. Daisai, immediately turned around and ran out. He was still holding the stuffed toy that he did not manage to throw at A.O. Daisai in time. Shuelai walked over and confiscated the stuffed toy from Yolashanda's mouth. "I don't understand. Why are you so keen on throwing things that are stained with your saliva at A.O. Daisai?" He paused for a moment and said in despair, "Forget it. A.O. Daisai likes you." The boy was still happy after being smashed. These two horses could play this childish game for the whole day. In front of the rice, Qiao Qiao, he could not wait to squeeze to the center seat to see what they were eating. Seeing that the dinner was sumptuous and that there were even donuts, Yolashanda, who did not feel that he was not liked at all, gratefully rubbed against the arrogant young master of the tycoon. Although Shuelai's attitude was a little cold, Shuelai had never treated him poorly. Furthermore, Otis had said that Shuelai was arrogant to everyone. Shuelai was already very nice to him. Qiao Qishi had met people and animals who liked him along the way. It was normal to meet someone who did not like him, so he did not force it. However, what happened next made him feel that he might have misunderstood. Perhaps Qiao Qiao was deeply in love with him. Qiao's face was full of nobility as he watched him and A.O. Daisai eat dinner. From time to time, he would take pictures and send them to Jia Sang. Yolashanda guessed. Other than sending the pictures to Jia Sang, he did not know that this cold examinee would send pictures of him to his own account. After dinner, Qiao washed his hair personally. He took apart the hair that Jia Sang had braided, washed it, dried it, and tied it again. Since Shuelai's skills were limited, Yolashanda could only wear the same style of hair as his boyfriend. Perhaps he heard from Jia Sang that Qiao liked to watch comedy films. So these few days, the screening room at home only played such films. These kinds of details inadvertently made people feel that Qiao was not as cold as he looked on the surface. Maybe he was actually a warm person. Xiao Qishi stayed at her boyfriend's house for a few days. It was almost time for Xiao Qishi's college entrance exam. Feeling a conscience, Xiao Qishi decided to stay quiet for the whole day and accompany Ao Daisai to take online classes. However, he didn't stay in the room for long before he knocked over a chair behind him. Hearing a loud bang behind him, Shuelai's expression froze. He raised his head and looked at the video. Only then did he realize that the two dogs were sneakily standing behind him, and his teacher and classmates were all. Shuelai gritted his teeth and tried his best to maintain a decent expression. Then, he stood up abruptly. This action frightened Yilishanda. He thought that Shuelai was going to chase him out. Thankfully, the other party only stood the chair up and moved it close to the wall. Just as Yilishanda was at a loss, the other party casually glanced at them. If you want to stay here, keep quiet. This is a rule that everyone has to abide by. Because this is a classroom, you have to respect the teacher and the other students. The teacher and students who like to look at horses relaxed their nervous expressions after hearing this. After all, they didn't want the two horses to be scolded too harshly because they were too cute. Shuelai sat down again. Behind him, there were two pairs of watery eyes looking at Shuelai's classmates and teacher adorably. With the company of the two horses, this class was particularly relaxing and interesting. Almost every 2 seconds, the students would look up at Shuelai's video to see if his horses were still there. Shuelai was the same. He would occasionally glance at the two horses and couldn't help but smile when he saw that they were sitting there quietly. In fact, there were no formal classes today. The teacher just explained the things to take note of during the exam and hoped that the students would remember them. Seeing that everyone's attention was attracted by the horses of Shuelai's classmates, the teacher warmly invited Shuelai to talk about his horses. Shuelai, who didn't like to accept such invitations, generously told the story of Yilishanda's visit to his home. His classmates were all international students. Perhaps they didn't know much about the Olympics, so he casually said that his horse's good friend, Yilishanda, would be competing for the next Olympic gold medal. Ao Daisai's ears twitched and casually told Xiao Qishi, "He's saying that he's proud of you." After the last class of his high school career, Shuelai closed his laptop and sat in his seat for a long time. Perhaps this was a very special class, he thought. Jia Sang hurried back to the capital before Shuelai went for the exam. It was his first time visiting his senior brother's house. He brought his mother's homemade cheese and Highland barley noodles. The next day, his senior brother went for the exam, and he took care of the two horses at home. Before Shuelai finished the exam, the holiday was over. Jia Sang had to take the horses back to the training base. Shuelai arranged for someone to send them back with Ao Daisai. After returning from the holiday, the first thing Coach Lee did was to check Yilishanda's weight and muscle condition. He found that Yilishanda and Ao Daisai had both gained fat. He was filled with regret. If Shuelai wasn't taking the exam, he would have called him and bombarded him. Shuelai, a mature horseman, actually allowed his horse to eat to this extent in just a few days. He didn't have a heart. Coach Lee, buckets of cream? I think you look like cream. He immediately started to formulate a training plan. He had to reduce the body fat percentage of the two horses within a week. Ao Daisai, after returning to Coach Lee's side, Alexander started to think about how good the blonde was. While Zahan was sending a video message to Zahan, who was still in the middle of the exam, Alexander also leaned over and licked the screen enthusiastically. Shuelai. He was originally discussing a very serious issue with Jia Sang, but now he couldn't find the mood. So he gave up on the treatment and greeted the other party. "Good evening, Yilishanda. But if I may ask, shouldn't you be in the stable at this time?" Little Bear was actually licking Blondie's video. A handsome black horse head squeezed over and pushed the cutie away. Then it stared at the human expressionlessly. Shuelai rubbed his eyebrows and raised his hand to promise him, "I won't steal your horse, because I'm a human and he's a horse, okay?" As soon as he finished speaking, he saw Jia Sang's horrified face. Shuelai, *T. After Shuelai finished his exam, he immediately went to the training base. He had something important to discuss with Coach Lee. "Lee, There's a saying in China called building a car behind closed doors. If Jia Sang and Yilashanda continue to train in the base, it's like building a car behind closed doors. What he lacks now is not the basics, but the experience of the competition. Coach Lee agreed. He had already guessed Shui Lai's plan, but he was very surprised. Logically speaking, Jia Sang's future had nothing to do with Shui Lai. Shui Lai? I'm not doing this for Jia Sang. I'm doing this for my horse's boyfriend. This relationship is too important. Okay? If Yilashanda didn't win the championship, Yilashanda wouldn't be happy. If Yilashanda wasn't happy, Ao Daisai would be even more unhappy. There was still half a year before the Olympics. In this half a year, he was willing to bring Jia Sang and Yilashanda to all the major competitions in Europe. The ranking didn't matter, as long as they could gain experience. Europe, continent, big competition arena. The ranking didn't matter? The ranking did matter. However, Jia Sang and Yilashanda hadn't stepped into the European competition yet, and they were only 16 years old. No matter how they performed, it wouldn't matter much. Anyone with eyes could see that they didn't come to Europe to compete for the ranking, but to find a free competition to practice. European competition. Are you looking down on me? Coach Lee called Jia Sang over to ask for his opinion on such an important matter. Was he willing to train in the base, or was he willing to follow his senior to take a look? Since Shui Lai was on summer vacation, this was a rare opportunity. Coach Lee believed that after 2 months of training, Jia Sang and Yilashanda would definitely be reborn. Jia Sang was tempted. Take a look at the European competition. Of course, that was the best thing, but wouldn't it cost money to participate? The last time he went abroad, he spent a lot of money to transport the horses. If he had to spend the country's money, he was very hesitant. Are you worried about money? Shui Lai's lips curled into a smile. How about senior brother give you some pointers? Jia Sang's ears perked up. Question mark. Win a championship and get the prize money. Shui Lai's tone was like buying cabbage on the street. Soon, Yilashanda knew that he was about to set off to the European competition. This would be his motivation to lose weight. Overwhelmed by the good news, he decided to run 2 more laps. Yilashanda, I'm not eating tonight. Ha ha, you don't have to. Hurry up and eat. Chapter 244. The news that Jia Sang and Yilashanda were going to Europe for training had spread throughout the national team. Fu Siyu and Qin were envious of them. They seemed to be reminded of their younger days, even though they were still very young now. They had been to Europe a long time ago. It was shameful to say that their rankings had always been SOSO. The highest internationally recognized ranking in China was obtained by Qin last year. He was ranked 13th in the total points of the 3 equestrian events. This was still far from being the world champion. However, it was already a very good standard. Even Shui Lai was not at this level. Shui Lai was famous because he was young and had a bright future ahead of him. The strength of the entire Asian team was indeed a little low. Therefore, the China team's qualification was more or less due to luck. They had not met a single strong team yet. Before leaving, the 2 seniors came to find Jia Sang and told him about their experiences in Europe. Although they knew that Jia Sang had a senior who had seen a lot of things, they still wanted to express their sincerity. However, after listening to them, Jia Sang became nervous. The senior said that if you suffered a setback in Europe, don't be sad. It was normal. Asian equestrian was just the beginning. Whether you could change the world's stereotype of Asian equestrian was up to you. Jia Sang was under a lot of pressure. He ran to ask his senior, "Are the European riders very strong?" His senior did not hesitate, very strong. On the other side, the same thing happened in the stable. Yilashanda was skipping dinner in order to lose weight. Ao Daisai was having a headache. Wasn't Little Bear already training according to Coach Lee's plan? This was enough. He did not need to add any more events. You don't understand. I'm going to Europe soon. Of course, I have to lose weight as soon as possible. However, he was not satisfied with his body shape. He looked in the mirror. Even the most standard and effortless movements looked a little clumsy and strenuous. It was all because of his body shape. He wanted to be light. He wanted to get rid of the fat and sugar accumulated. He meant what he said. Ao Daisai shook his head. Maybe you'll be in the limelight in the Asian qualifiers, but you'll just be a nobody in Europe. No one will pay attention to you. In Europe, there are many talented people in five-star competitions, and there are also many people who have become champions of five-star and above competitions. If you want to get a ranking, it's not realistic. The international rankings were constantly changing, and the top 10 were all in Europe. Although Qin and had managed to squeeze in a 13th place with much difficulty, perhaps in a few months, someone would rush ahead of him. If Qin wanted to go one step further, he might have to bet his entire career. Xiao Qishi was stunned. He knew that Ao Daisai was right. They were only there to broaden their horizons and gain experience. They did not need to care too much about the results. Cutting off food to lose weight was indeed a little extreme. Ao Daisai saw that he had loosened up and hurriedly pushed the food over. Her gaze was gentle as she said, "Hurry up and eat." Actually, according to him, Little Bear's figure was already quite standard. It was not like he could not jump over it. Wasn't it good to have a rounder figure? Ao Daisai could not bear to make him thin and look as pitiful as if he had no food to eat. Xiao Qishi ate her meal contentedly. She inadvertently glanced at her boyfriend's figure and could not help but feel jealous. "Why are you not fat, even though you eat as much as I do?" Ao Daisai's body lines were so beautiful. There was not a trace of fat to be seen. It was smooth and sexy. Yilashanda cried, "I'm fat too." Ao Daisai suddenly became nervous. He could not honestly say, "During the holidays, you were sleeping in and I was running. You're fat?" Xiao Qishi pouted and could not help but rub against Ao Daisai's body, letting him feel the muscles that he envied. Ao Daisai's hair was very smooth and comfortable to rub against. As Yilashanda continued to rub against him, Ao Daisai coughed softly and asked uncertainly, "Do you want to go on a date with me?" The white horse next to the black horse froze instantly and then retracted its head. "Date? No, no, no. How would he dare?" However, if he rejected too directly, he was afraid that Ao Daisai would be sad, so he pretended to hesitate for a few seconds. "It's not very suitable." He rolled his eyes. "I'm afraid that if our relationship is exposed, humans will break us up." Ao Daisai thought to himself, "We are two horses. What does it have to do with us being a couple?" However, he did not ask. He only said, "Isn't it already exposed?" The white horse next to him was shocked and stared at him. Question mark. "It's true. Blondie knows." He told Jia Sang. Ao Daisai revealed. Yilashanda scolded angrily. "Why is Blondie so talkative?" Ao Daisai was puzzled. "Don't you want humans to know? This should not be a problem. Anyway, humans have not shown any signs of discomfort." "No, I'm just a little embarrassed." Yilashanda immediately retracted his anger. His anger was like a mask that came and went quickly. This topic seemed to have come to an end. The couple chatted idly for a while. Ao Daisai suddenly brought it up again. "How is it? Do you want to go on a date?" Xiao Qishi was so shy that she scratched the ground with her hoofs. Who would ask this seriously? Ao Daisai even came over and tried to bribe her with his handsome face. Most of the handsome horse's eyes were beautiful and deep, and Ao Daisai's eyes were the most beautiful. No one could resist his gaze. Seeing that the little cutie did not take the bait, Ao Daisai gradually let out a charming breathing sound that invaded the little cutie's ears. "Yilashanda!" Exclamation point. "That's a foul, brother." While the two horses were flirting, someone came to clean up their cutlery. The shy Yilashanda quickly jumped away and stayed thousands of miles away from Ao Daisai. When the person left, Ao Daisai came up to him again to ask for his opinion. He was extremely embarrassed. Xiao Qishi thought about it. After reuniting in this life, they had indeed not been intimate. Ao Daisai wanted to be affectionate with her. Little did he know that the other party did not want to force him. She just did not want him to be too nervous and put all his attention on the competition. In other words, Ao Daisai was a little jealous. He was willing to help Yilashanda win the championship. However, he hoped that Yilashanda would focus on him more. Winning the championship was only secondary. The two horses kissed in the stable after the lights were off. In the dead of night, this corner was filled with tenderness. When Ao Daisai kissed his ear and said, Ao Daisai first, the competition second, Yilashanda immediately surrendered and nodded without resistance. Tonight's date and the competition second. The next morning, Ao Daisai was full of energy and led Qiao Qishi, who had not slept enough, for a run. Qiao Qishi complained behind them, "Oh, didn't you say the competition second? Didn't you say not to care too much about results? Why did you have to wake me up early in the morning to brush my face? You're inhumane, woo-woo." Actually, it was already late. The coaches and riders were training at the side. They also had to train their physical fitness. Coach Lee looked thoughtful. Yilashanda is not quite right this morning. She kept whining. Is she not feeling well? Jia Sang was of course the one who knew Jia Sang best. Everyone looked at Jia Sang. It shouldn't be that she is not feeling well. Is she in a bad mood? Jia Sang had been paying attention to his horse for a long time. Hearing this, he laughed. Maybe Ao Daisai made her angry. After laughing, he quickly closed his mouth and stole a glance at his senior. His senior had said that Ao Daisai and Yilashanda could not be told for the time being. Therefore, he could not reveal that Yilashanda and Ao Daisai were angry. His senior looked back at Jia Sang and then secretly made a zipper over his mouth. Jia Sang quickly nodded. He was still young and did not understand how two stallions could fall in love. What was the difference between them and good friends? Since his senior told him that there was a difference, he did not delve into it. Under Ao Daisai's carrot and stick education, Yilashanda lost fat very quickly. After a week, she was back to her peak condition. The night before boarding the plane, all the team members went out to eat hot pot as a farewell for Jia Sang and his two disciples. Yilashanda was jealous. They didn't bring me to eat hot pot. I wish each of them gained 5 kilograms. Ao Daisai looked at the not-so-smart little bear strangely and said, "If the riders gain 5 kilograms, aren't you and I the ones who have to suffer?" "All right." Yilashanda quickly retracted her vicious curse. "Then I wish them a life without sex." Yes, this was even more vicious. If they wanted to participate in an overseas equestrian competition, their first choice was naturally the United Kingdom, the origin of equestrian. There were many equestrian competitions in the United Kingdom every year. At this time, they were just in time for the last competition in June, the Yessen Derby. It was limited to 3-year-old horses, and the total prize money was £5 million. This competition was mainly an endurance race, also known as the turf race. The total distance was more than 2,000 meters. Yilashanda had not participated in such a competition before. Perhaps she could try something new. After all, she only had one 3-year-old horse in her life. After this year, she would not be able to participate again. Shuelai was not interested in this competition. The main reason was that the prize money was not much and it was difficult to register. However, in the announced list, there were a few American riders that he was familiar with. One look, and he could tell that they had fought before. These riders must have gone overseas to participate in the competition in the United Kingdom because of the prize money. The unkind senior asked his junior, "How's Yilashanda's endurance? Have you run long distances?" He asked the right person. Jia Sang's eyes shone with a rare ray of confidence. "My home is on the grasslands. Senior, what do you think?" Yilashanda followed him out to herd the cows every day. The round trip was more than 2,000 meters. As a Highland horse, it was impossible to not have endurance. Shuelai smiled and turned around to spend money to register his junior. The prize money could not belong to his junior, but it definitely could not belong to those Americans. In the past, it was indeed difficult for Yi Sang to register for the Derby Masters competition. However, this year, it was slightly more relaxed. Moreover, it was an unknown Chinese kid. It would not affect the competition at all. Jia Sang was shocked when he heard that he would be participating in the competition in 2 days. He had never participated in such a competition before. Yilashanda had never participated in it before. Why did his senior sign him up without saying anything? He even spent money. This money must have been wasted. Jia Sang's face was full of pressure. Not having participated in a competition before is not a reason for you to be afraid. You have participated in too few competitions. His senior argued. I'm talking about endurance training. We have not even trained before. Jia Seng was going crazy. Shuai comforted him. It's okay. The most important thing is to participate. You just need to run faster than those Americans. Coach Lee was also surprised when he heard that Shuai had arranged a 2500 m grassland race for Jia Seng. However, he felt that it was worth a try. Therefore, he quickly gave Jia Seng an urgent training session and told him what to pay attention to in an endurance race. The 2500 m was actually not a long distance. With Yulashanda's ability, his result would not be too bad. Yulashanda also knew what his first competition in England was. A 2500 m grassland race. What kind of endurance race was that? He snorted, not to mention when he was herding cows on the grassland. When he was a lion, he had endurance and explosive power. A mere 2500 m was nothing to him. Alisanda had a clear idea of how to run the 2,500 meters well. Since Jia Seng only had experience running long-distance horses on the grassland, he did not know much about it. Therefore, Coach Lee suggested that he create his own personal account and update his competition status abroad. However, he rejected the suggestion like it was a scourge. Jia Seng always felt that he had come to Europe to embarrass himself. He did not want his compatriots in China to see him in such a sorry state in another country. The pressure was so great. Therefore, the fans in China thought that Jia Seng and Yulashanda were still training behind closed doors at the national team's training base. They did not know that they had already left and were about to be beaten up. When the latest name list was released, Jia Seng and Yulashanda's names were so inconspicuous that they could not be found in the crowd. Coach Lee joked, any pair of Chinese-style names would not be so inconspicuous. Just like that, Jia Seng and his little white horse, who no one cared about, arrived at the stadium in the evening of the first day of the competition. Yes, the competition was held at night because the weather was too hot during the day. The competition would only start when the temperature dropped. The British people had a special obsession with horsemanship. Many people came to watch the competition in the early hours of the morning. Before the competition even started, the stadium was already full of people. Seeing that the audience was full of foreign faces, Jia Seng suddenly did not feel nervous. Because no one knew him, he could just relax and compete. Although no one knew him, his handsome horse still attracted attention. Moreover, Yulashanda's hairstyle was very delicate today. He even had a small flower tied into his hair. People who did not know him would think that he was here to participate in a dressage competition. Yulashanda, shut up, this is my daily life. A.O. Daisai used his Frisian heritage to get a free ticket to watch the competition. This was probably the legendary, relying on one's looks to make a living. Many people came forward to ask for a photo with him. Because today was the Little Bears competition, he was in a good mood. Therefore, he patiently took the photo. If A.O. Daisai attracted attention because of his handsome appearance and expensive heritage, then Yulashanda attracted a lot of attention because of his exquisite braids. They like you very much. A.O. Daisai bit Yulashanda's white ear with a little jealousy. You stole my line, handsome. Yulashanda rolled his eyes and thought to himself. The competition was about to start. Shuai led his reluctant horse away and said, Okay, let's go to the audience and give him some time to prepare. Just now, when the two horses were whispering to each other, he wanted to say, Are you here to date or to compete? In the next competition, Shuai felt that he had to sign A.O. Daisai up. Otherwise, this guy would be so immersed in his woman that he would forget how to run on the track. Author has something to say. Little Bear, don't worry, my husband is very strong. Chapter 245. The white horse from China that no one paid attention to was arranged to be on the outermost track. It was understandable because he was almost the last contestant to register. The attire for the turf race was different from the 3 equestrian events. Although the riders wore the same attire, they all had different colors and patterns, mainly for comfort. This indicated that this was a free-spirited race, and there would not be too many restrictions during the process. As long as they did not do anything too outrageous, it was okay to do something secretly. as long as they were not discovered. Xiao Qixi stood on the track with the other 20 horses. He could feel the restlessness and bad temper of the horses. It was not hard to imagine that if a rider fell off the horse, it would be very dangerous on this mighty track. Xiao Qixi was a little worried. He hoped that Jia Sang would be careful. In such a free-spirited race, he should not be too concerned about the modesty of the Chinese. He had to be a hooligan. He believed that Blondie must have told Jia Sang before the race that the secret of the turf race was to take advantage of every opportunity. With a gunshot, the race officially began. The horses that had been waiting impatiently suddenly raised their hooves and ran forward. The track was humming, and the horses that started at the same time were crowded together. It really made people break out in a cold sweat. If there were no accidents, a group of excellent horses would stand out 5 minutes after the start of the race. They would occupy the leading position and become the favorite to win the race. But there were often exceptions. Some dark horses that did not show their strength hid at the back and rushed up in the last 500 meters to win the championship. Yilashanda did not want to be the target of public criticism. At the start of the race, he ran a little mediocre, even a little behind, because he was observing his opponents from the back. When he knew who his opponents were, he had a rough idea of how much effort he needed to spend in this race. The Masters Belsen Derby was the second of the 3 consecutive championships in the UK. The level of the contestants was very good. It was said that there was a winner of the first championship. Needless to say, their goal was to win the Grand Slam in the UK. After finally observing his opponent, Yilashanda, who had fallen behind by a lot, wanted to go to the front. Otherwise, if he continued like this, he would be booed by the British audience. He did not want to embarrass his country. In fact, the horsemen who participated in the turf race would not hang the national flag on their clothes. This was not a national derby, and each horseman was only representing himself. However, some of the riders were very eye-catching and hung the national flag on their backs, as if they were afraid that others would not know where they came from. These 2 horses had been blocking in front of Yilashanda. He did not know if it was Yilashanda's misconception, but he felt that the horses were deliberately targeting him. Fortunately, Jia Sang was not a soft persimmon that could be easily bullied. When he was riding on the grassland, he had dozens of horses running together. This kind of formation was not enough to deal with. Of course, his senior brother had told him to take advantage of any opportunity he could find. Even if there were 2 horses in front of him that seemed to be deliberately blocking him, Jia Sang would find an opening to fill in. This kind of filling in was very dangerous. If he did not do it often, he was afraid that he would want to retreat. Yilashanda had experienced all kinds of storms and waves. At this moment, he seemed to be telepathically connected with his partner. Jia Sang's reins moved, and his forelimbs slammed hard to the left. He seized the opportunity and overtook the 2 American horses. Then he rushed forward. His lightning-like movement made many of the horsemen unable to react in time. He ran to the second column, which meant that he appeared in the audience's vision. People then noticed this white horse from China. At the same time, the announcer's surprised voice said exactly what the audience was thinking. "Oh, look, there's a white horse in the second column. Let's see who it is. Where did it come from?" According to the numbers on the horses, the announcer got an incredible answer. They are Jia Sang and Yilashanda from China. The horses behind him are probably stunned. What happened just now? Let's replay it on the big screen. These words completely attracted the attention of the audience. People looked up at the big screen closest to them. They were shocked to see that the white horse that was behind them a minute ago suddenly changed direction and overtook them from a tricky angle. First, it successfully overtook the 2 horses in front of it. Then, within a minute, it overtook all the horses behind the second column. Some people applauded, while others thought that he showed his strength too early. It was only 5 minutes into the race, and the race was 2,500 meters long. Look, after the white horse showed his strength, the strategy of the horsemen in the race changed. It seemed that they were stimulated by him. Many of the horsemen who were still calm began to chase each other. After all, none of them wanted to be outdone by a horse from China. That would be a disgrace. China's horses came from the equestrian basin. As European horsemen, they had their own pride and persistence. No matter what, They should not fall behind China's horses. Qiao Qixi. Then you guys will have a lot to catch up with. The audience thought that he had already shown his strength, but in fact, he had not started a sprint. He was running in the second column to hide, not to attack. This was the first time that Shui Lai saw Yulishanda run a long distance. 5 minutes into the race, he was very confident. Jia Sang was indeed a child who grew up on horseback. Although he said that he had stage fright, he was more reckless than anyone else when he ran. Shui Lai looked at his horse and found that it was also watching the race intently. He thought with mixed feelings, your partner is very strong. Don't worry. Tonight, there were also overseas Chinese who were watching the race. When they heard that China's horse was participating, they were very happy. They could not believe that they could see their own country's horse competing overseas. This was the United Kingdom, where equestrian originated. Horses that came here to compete were like pilgrims. Riders who dared to step into the United Kingdom must be extraordinary. The Chinese were looking forward to it. Although the little white horse in China fell behind the other contestants 5 minutes into the race, everyone was still in high spirits. Some of his compatriots even turned on the live broadcast and relayed the situation. He originally just wanted to vent his excitement. After all, this was really rare. It was a pity that he could not share it with everyone. But he did not expect that the live broadcast would spread like wildfire. It was even posted to a crowded place. Every netizen who entered the live broadcast said, "What the F asterisk CK? Our China's horse?" The first group of netizens who entered the live broadcast saw that the white horse fell behind and was blocked by the other horses. The irritable old man began to curse, but in order to not be blocked, they could only make insinuations and continue to watch the race. When they found out that our little contestant was only 16 years old, they suddenly felt like an old father sending his child abroad to compete. It was so painful to be bullied. But the mountain was long and the river was far away. They could only use their keyboards to show their support. But soon, things took a turn for the better. The child overtook the other horse at the bend and went straight to the second column. The old man exclaimed that it was fun. He rubbed his eyes to see if he was blind. How'd he go up? What the F asterisk CK? What the F asterisk CK? When they were crazily posting what the F asterisk CK on their WeChat moments, no one knew what kind of stimulation they had received. The child was firmly in the second column. Even if he did not win the prize, it would be a good result if he continued to run like this. The keyboard army continued to post, "Don't touch our child. All monsters retreat." To let the white horse run safely to the finish line like this, everyone's wish was very humble. The netizens' wishes were quickly crushed. Countless riders caught up from behind. Some were even very close. Were they not afraid of danger? Of course, they were afraid. They were just relying on their experience. Those who dared to enter the race were not cowards. How could such a small scene be? Looking at the countless horse legs swaying in front of their eyes, the audience felt dizzy. They could not imagine that they were one of the riders on the back of a horse. The 16-year-old Jia Sang was very calm. He was not frightened by the mighty battle. On his slightly tanned face, there was a calmness that did not match his age. When he was running, his gaze was like that of an eagle on the grassland. He and his Yulishanda avoided the attempts of many riders to overtake them. They had firmly maintained their position. No one could shake them. The race was always changing. The boy and his white horse seemed to be in control of time. They were very stable. Coach Lee clenched his hands tightly. His palms were soaked with sweat. The muscles on his back did not relax for a long time. It was obvious that he was immersed in the white-hot state of the race. The netizens in the live broadcast room realized that no monsters could shake their country's horse. They were suddenly filled with pride. They were also completely immersed in the race. The unscrupulous streamer even played a passionate song in the live broadcast room. It made their adrenaline rush. They cannot wait to start running. Steady, steady. Even if he is ranked 4th or 5th, it is still very good. This is our child's first appearance in Europe. This is a good result. The first column consisted of the top 3. They were competing with each other. The distance between them was less than a horse's length. The rankings could change at any time. The second column consisted of the 4th and 5th place. They were dangerous people waiting to counterattack. Yulashanda placed himself and his neighbor in this way. However, in the eyes of others, their strength stopped there. Suddenly, there was a burst of cheers. As it was the last 500 meters, one of the top three who had been fighting fiercely suddenly stood out. He left the second and third place far behind. Everyone in the audience could see that the race had entered the most exciting final stage. All the riders would grit their teeth and perform their best. He is so strong. He is an Irish rider. British equestrian skills are indeed world-renowned. He is too strong. Let's just fight for fourth place. Not only the audience outside the field thought so. Perhaps Jia Sang's coach and senior also thought so. Fourth place seemed to be good enough. Shuai did not know Jia Sang's limit and strategy, but he still felt that this was not his limit. The last 500 meters, the tall teenager murmured. His eyes were fixed on the field. He was very nervous. If you can still run, now is your chance. No, it was not the time yet. In the special auditorium, a pair of deep eyes were also fixed on every movement of the horses in the field. Little Bear was lazy. It would consume a lot of energy to start sprinting at 500 meters. Ao Daisai guessed that Little Bear would continue the lion's habit. He would hibernate until he was close to the finish line and win in one fell swoop. 450 meters, 400 meters, 350 meters, 300 meters, Ao Daisai gently closed his eyes to moisten his dry eyes. Then he opened them again. He believed that he would see a different world. Indeed, Alisanda had attacked him the moment he opened his eyes, just as he had predicted. The audience inside and outside the field only saw a blur in front of their eyes. A white and handsome horse firmly caught their attention. The other party was sprinting. Like an arrow, a small tuft of hair was left on the top of his head, fluttering in the wind in a straight line. Oh, the field was silent for 2 seconds. Then the audience erupted. It was proven that as long as you were good enough, the audience would cheer for you no matter which country you were from. Alisanda ran forward with all his might. The original second and third place were left behind by him, like a scenery line. The live broadcast room exploded. Some people forgot to refresh the screen. Some people hammered their keyboards. Some people pushed their chairs and stood up. Some people screamed. The young and inexperienced child from the grassland of the motherland, in the veteran British competition, caught up in the last 300 meters. He overtook the second and third place by a large margin from the fourth place. Then, he overtook the first place in the last 50 meters. The moment the white horse passed the first place, a netizen in the live broadcast room said that he was watching the race on his knees. He was too excited. This race was beautifully played. He believed that today, at this moment, Yulashanda suddenly broke into the hearts of many people. From here on, his fans who followed him would remember this battle forever. With the speed of a horse race, 50 meters was just a matter of a moment. Yulashanda was completely guessed by his boyfriend this time. He once again brushed the finish line and completed the task. He became the Derby champion that Coach Lee loved and hated. The wonderful race deserved a long applause. It was grand and enthusiastic, full of people's recognition and investment. This was the charm of horse racing. The Chinese horse and the Chinese rider became the focus. They slowed down and ran on the green grass with the proud attitude of a winner. Yulashanda had been waiting for this moment for a long time. He showed off his exquisite outfit to his heart's content. Look, even his tail. His dressage was excellent. At this time, he also improvised a victory parade to let people know that he was originally a competitor in the equestrian triathlon. He only participated in the long-distance grassland race to earn some extra money. His countrymen who were watching the race were already in awe. They covered their eyes and looked at him through their fingers. Treasure. That's enough. Modesty is the tradition of our country. However, the foreign audience liked the character of this white horse. They laughed kindly when they saw the white horse dance dressage on the grass after winning the championship. They accompanied each other with rhythmic applause. A cute and powerful white horse. He came from mysterious China that people did not know much about. That night, The British people remembered this group of white horses from the East and hoped to see them in the equestrian triathlon. He danced really well. After the race, a spectator who had watched the race accepted an impromptu interview. She said, "Yes, I'm in a good mood. Thank you. I watched a wonderful race tonight. It was very wonderful. I like the Eastern white horse who won the championship. Yes, he is so cute. His dance is also very good." Another spectator said, "Is he really a Chinese horse? Really?" His eyes widened and his expression of disbelief was more vivid than his words. The reporter was a little nervous. "Yes, is there a problem?" The spectator shrugged. "I thought Chinese horses would be as reserved and shy as Chinese people." So that was the case. The reporter breathed a sigh of relief and asked with a smile, "Then where do you think this horse is from? England?" "No, England doesn't have such a sense of humor." The British spectator made fun of himself. From his words and actions, it was obvious that he liked Yolashanda and gave him a very high evaluation. Tonight's champion came to the sidelines and gathered with his coach companions to share the excitement of winning the championship. The teacher and the students had just said a few words when something happened again. It was said that there was a rider who wanted to test the horse. The so-called testing of the horse was when the rider had doubts about the result of the race and thought that the horse had taken illegal drugs. This was blatant bullying. Fortunately, the spectators had no way of knowing. Otherwise, they would have felt wrong for their children. There was no lack of trouble in the sports world. Yolashanda was not surprised at all. "What is testing a horse?" Ao Daisai approached and asked. Xiao Qishi explained to him that the opponent suspected that the horse had taken drugs to increase its endurance and explosive power. "Oh, I see. Ao Daisai. Then I don't need it." Chapter 246. There were actually people who suspected that Little Bear's results were fake. Hearing this news, Ao Daisai's first emotion was not anger. There was nothing to be angry about. He just looked down on those people even more. They were too narrow-minded and arrogant. It was fine to test the horses, but all the horses in the competition had to be tested. This would be a huge project and would definitely delay the award ceremony. The organizers said that they would only test the top 3 horses. Otherwise, delaying the award ceremony would cause a commotion or cause unnecessary suspicion from the audience. The second and third place finishers were also stunned when they were asked to test their horses. Although they were overtaken by a horse from China at the last moment, those who knew the ropes could see that the other party's explosive power and strategic planning were indeed qualified. They couldn't say that they were convinced of their defeat, but they had never doubted it. They heard that some riders were not satisfied with the results. They could more or less sense that this dissatisfaction was not directed at the second and third place finishers, but at the first place finisher. Even those who requested to have their horses tested felt that they were being treated unfairly. Their coaches did not relent and also requested that all 21 horses be tested together. The organizers were having a headache. They had not had such an incident in many years, but it happened this year. If the outside world knew about it, they were afraid that there would not be any outstanding riders participating in the next Yessen Derby. They could not secretly test the horses. After a short discussion, the organizers decided to act as if nothing had happened and continue with the award ceremony. This way, they would offend the riders who doubted the results of the competition. The other party might wantonly defame the competition, but it was better than destroying their own reputation. Yolashanda waited for a while. He was quite disappointed when he heard that there was no need to test the horses. It would have been better if the horses were tested. The opponents would have lost convincingly. However, it was not bad to get the money immediately. This way, they would have the money to participate in the next competition. Jiaseng would also not be stingy about saving money. During the award ceremony, Yolashanda once again stepped onto the green grass proudly. The long-awaited audience was very happy to see him again. His compatriots in China were also waiting for this scene. They finally saw him receive the award. His anxious heart finally settled down. It turned out that they were also afraid that the organizers would hide their compatriots' award. They did not know that there was such a risk just now. At the end of the race, before the sun had even risen in England, the exhausted riders and horses returned to their resting places and did what they had to do. Of course, there were also energetic people who wanted to socialize after the match. Although Shuai Lai did not participate in the race, he and his horse were the center of attention wherever they went. Moreover, this was Britain, where he grew up, and he was familiar with the riders. However, he did not accept these enthusiastic invitations. As the champion, Jia Sang's side was deserted. The two horses were kissing each other beside him. Coach Li had gone to his left and right again, while the popular senior was surrounded by a group of riders. But he did not feel lonely. Standing there, his heart was burning, and when someone looked at him, he returned the brightest smile. Shuai Lai quickly noticed that his junior brother was being ignored. He returned to his side and asked after a long time, "Do you want to learn English?" The child immediately opened his eyes wide, as if to say, "So senior brother has such high expectations for me?" Jia Sang was like a small animal being chased. He shook his head in panic because he felt that he did not even understand Chinese. How could he learn English? At this moment, Coach Li returned to his side. He smiled and said, "So what if you don't understand the language? Horse racing is not a war of words. Besides, communication is inconvenient, so you don't have to entertain others." The next day, the British media reported on the race. Perhaps it was because Yulashanda's appearance and personality were very much in line with their aesthetic standards. The major newspapers did not hesitate to use half of the page to publish Yulashanda's picture. The British people loved horses, not to mention such a beautiful and cute horse. Therefore, the newspaper sales that day increased greatly. The newspaper companies were overjoyed and immediately sent people to search for more stories about Yulashanda. They found Shuai Lai's account on China's social media sites and obtained important information from it. It turned out that this white horse from China was good friends with Ao Daisai. When Shuai Lai first stood out in the juvenile group, he received a lot of attention, including the Friesland horse that he had raised. Later, when people heard that he had brought the horse back to China, they felt sorry for him for a long time. They did not expect that after Ao Daisai went to China, he actually made good friends and even brought his good friends to the United Kingdom during the summer vacation. Instantly, the British people's acceptance of Yulashanda skyrocketed because they were closer to each other. After the organizers heard about this story, they praised him for being quick-witted and withstanding the pressure during the race. Otherwise, the friendship between the two horses would be damaged. Wasn't that more important than anything else? Yulashanda did not know that he had become a guarantee for the newspaper sales. After the race, he was depressed for 2 days. When he heard that a reporter wanted to interview him, his eyes were still covered with mucus. His hair was also uncombed, and he did not look photogenic at all. The reporter's task was to interview Yulashanda and Yulashanda's rider. He did not expect to be greeted by a familiar face, Shuai Lai. He had also interviewed this genius rider before. The other party said that his friend did not speak English, so he had to be present for the interview. The reporter could not be more welcoming. He felt that after interviewing these two, his bonus for the month would be in the bag. However, this interview was not as simple as buying 2 and getting 1 free. It was definitely buying 2 and getting 2 free. When the very young champion came out with the white horse, the handsome Friesland was beside the white horse. Both horses had obviously been cleaned up. The white horse had a delicate ponytail and looked more lively and cute in real life. It was completely impossible to imagine that he would be so wild in the race. He heard that the other party was a 3-sport equestrian, but did not know why he came to participate in the grassland race. After admiring the recently popular white horse, the reporter shifted his gaze to the side. No matter if he saw the horse on the screen or in real life, he felt that everyone would at least spend some time on each other and enjoy a visual feast. Ao Daisai did not actually dress himself up. His black hair was naturally draped to one side. He usually tied his hair in a ponytail, so when he draped his hair down, it was naturally wavy and looked a little lazy. It was indeed very good looking. It was as if he had just woken up and heard that his good friend was coming out for an interview, so he came along. With such a luxurious lineup, the news agency was embarrassed to only pay for 1 copy. Soon, Jia Sang received the competition prize and the news agency's remuneration. He was stunned. After all, He had never seen so much money in his life and did not want to take it. This is the competition prize. Shall I give it to Coach Lee? However, his senior brother told him that this was the money that had already been distributed to him. If it was given to him, it belonged to him and he could use it freely. That was still too much. How about this? You open an account for your Lashanda and take a portion of it. Then save the rest for him. Raising a horse is also a big expense. When he retires, you will have to pay for it yourself. Horse racing retired at around the age of 10. The golden age for racing was only a few years. After retirement, they would need to spend money for their retirement. Shuai said, "This is how I treat Ao Daisai. Save all the prize money he earns from the competition for him." When the two were talking, Xiao Qishi did not eavesdrop. However, today's topic was related to money. He stared at the two of them with sparkling eyes. Haha, he loved to listen to this kind of topic. He wished he could join in. Jia Sang was too inexperienced. He had money, but did not know how to spend it. Wasn't that simple? Suddenly, the blonde made a very humane suggestion. His impression of the blonde rose instantly. Not bad. Open an account for your Lashanda and save your Lashanda's pension. However, when he heard the last part, his expression changed. He looked at Ao Daisai. What? You have an account? The prize money is in it? Why did Ao Daisai not mention it before? He did not believe that the blonde had not mentioned it before. Ao Daisai was suddenly questioned. For a moment, he did not answer smoothly. His smart and cunning partner immediately understood that he knew about it. So you knew about it, but you didn't tell me. Xiao Qishi was angry. If the blonde had not let it slip, he would not have known that Jia Sang had a small treasury until he retired. Ah, you actually learned how to hide money? Damn it. Otis did not know how to explain himself. It was true that he had hidden the money, but there were a few times when he wanted to bring it up. However, he could not find the right opportunity to do so. No, the money is all yours, Ao Daisai said. I found out. Of course it's mine, Xiao Qishi said. However, he was still very angry. He stared at Ao Qishi and complained. I told you everything I had. You have so much prize money, but you didn't tell me. I'm not happy. After being kicked by Little Bear, Ao Daisai reflexively wanted to dodge. However, his strong survival instinct told him that not only could he not dodge, but he also wanted to give himself a kick. It's my fault. Don't be angry. The black horse that was beaten up leaned over like a sticky candy and rubbed against his body. Alisanda's heart soon softened. However, he said, "Who's your little cutie? How much prize money do you have?" Ao Daisai blinked and thought carefully. He answered truthfully. However, it was not much because he had not participated in many competitions. Shuai had been focusing on his studies this year. He had not made any money for a year. As a wild beast, Ao Daisai did not have any concept of money. However, he knew that Little Bear liked it. After the competition at the end of June, Shuai reviewed the competition with Jia Sang. He taught his junior to fully understand the core techniques of the speed competition. At the same time, he also paid attention to the competitions around the country. However, he was not in a hurry. During this time, everyone noticed that Ao Daisai had become more self-disciplined. He ran laps on the racecourse early in the morning. The place where they stayed was a large racecourse. The rent was very expensive. Therefore, Coach Lee joked, "Oh, Daisai also took a year off. I think he can't wait to return to the competition. Shuai, it's time for you to show up." After listening to Coach Lee's advice, Shuai really began to select the competitions. Perhaps it was a small world. He found that the most popular competitions were held in the United States. That was a tiger's den. What's more, what happened in England had probably spread to the United States. At this point, they might be rejected if they signed up for the competition. Regardless, Shuai just wanted to give it a try. He signed up casually. If the other party did not accept, they would go to France. However, unexpectedly, the organizers of the United States quickly replied. They welcomed any strong riders and horses to participate in the competition. The author has something to say. Ao Daisai and Little Bear's first battle together is in the United States. Chapter 247. If the live broadcast of the Chinese compatriot made Jia Sang and Yelashanda popular on the internet, then the mainstream newspapers in England were the main culprits that pushed this innocent white horse to the forefront. Now, not only did the people living in England know about him, the famous white horse, but the netizens from his homeland who often wandered around the internet also suddenly realized that the horse from his homeland was on the front page of the mainstream newspapers in England. Their first reaction was the same as that of a certain audience member who was interviewed. Is this really our compatriot? No one could blame them for their lack of national confidence. The main thing was that any horse or rider from another country, regardless of whether they were good or not, would never be able to shine in the mainstream newspapers in England. After confirming that the news was true, the netizens were very excited and reported the news back to the intranet. Indeed, a lot of netizens who did not know about this matter were informed, and they were proud of it. Thus, the live broadcast from before was dug up again and received even more views. Originally, not many people would pay attention to such a niche sports event. However, Yelashanda miraculously broke the curse of the sports industry. Perhaps it was because he was cute enough. It had long been known as the black and white couple. Yes, the black and white couple referred to Yelashanda and his good friend Ao Daisai. The fans affectionately called them the black and white couple. Now, even more people became fans of this handsome pair full of gay love. Yes, although the CP fans were late, they still arrived. The main thing was that the interaction between the two horses was too cute. The black horse was so aggressive, elegant, and noble. His appearance and ability alone were enough to fill people's imagination. Recently, his good friend Yelashanda had been competing everywhere. He actually followed him all the way and did not miss a single match. How could people not think about this? Yelashanda, who was full of energy on the field, used his absolute strength to crush his opponents. It was hard to say that he did not have an aggressive aura. However, this kind of Yelashanda was willing to be like a child beside the black horse and often did silly things that made people convulse with laughter. It could only be said that the netizens' analysis was right. Yelashanda could be Ao Daisai's little fool, but he could also be an ambitious dreamer. Now, he was very much looking forward to the trip to America. Otis did not let his efforts go to waste. He finally used his self-discipline to remind little yellow hair not to waste his time on the field. The competition was where he belonged. Unlike Yelashanda, Ao Daisai did not have dreams. His goal was to win the prize. With the prize money, Little Bear would be happy. In other words, his goal was to make Little Bear happy. What dreams did a wild beast want? Their initial goal was just to survive. It was enough as long as they had food, water, and a safe place to stay. It was only because he had taken an extra look at Little Bear next door at the aid station that he had developed more desires from then on. Chow 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 chows chow. Chows chowses. Chow chows chow. Chow chow chow. Chow chow. Chow Chi thought to himself, today's training is so tiring. That bastard Ao Daisai still has the energy to torture Chow Chow. Today's training was indeed heavy, but Ao Daisai was not tired. If he was tired, then he would be too weak and would not be able to conquer Europe. Chow Chi knew that if the other party did not really want to be close to him, he would not force him. Therefore, he did not reject him. Anyway, it was just for a while. He would sleep after that. Thanks to the restless night, Chow rested on the plane the next day with his eyes closed. He did not show any motion sickness. Ao Daisai stayed by his side and glanced at him from time to time. When he saw that Chow was sleeping and breathing normally, he was relieved. There were still a few days before the competition. Equestrian fans who knew that black and white were going overseas to watch Chow and Chow were going overseas. Soon, the American competition announced the list of participants, attracting equestrian fans from all over the country to buy tickets to watch the competition. The admission fee was also one of the sources of income for the organizers. In order to attract more spectators, they would pay to invite riders and horses with their own popularity to participate in the competition. Of course, Yelashanda and Ao Daisai did not have such prestige yet. With their previous results, they did not have to spend money to sign up. Little did they know that the Chinese market was an immeasurable market. When people saw Yolashanda and Ao Daisai's names side by side on the form, they did not hesitate to buy tickets. This was the first time black and white had participated in the competition together. The fans in China were ecstatic when they heard the news. They gathered together on Weibo to discuss the competition enthusiastically and invited netizens to broadcast the competition. On the day of the competition, the official sports account reposted the relevant information, proving that they were also paying attention to black and white in beauty. In order to make it convenient for all the participants to stay, there would be accommodation near the competition venue so that the riders and horses could be taken care of properly. Yolashanda and Ao Daisai could feel the wealth of the organizers the moment they checked in. Fortunately, it was free of charge. Along the way, they heard that someone had arrived, that his horse was very good, and so on. Don't we look like two nobodies who have come to the Vanity Fair of crouching tigers and hidden dragons? Yolashanda laughed at herself. The staff who led them to choose the stables did not seem to have even heard of their names. Don't they read the British newspapers? Are you unhappy that they did not praise you? Ao Daisai was puzzled. At the same time, she was thinking of words that Little Bear might like to hear. Can you not hit the nail on the head? Actually, that was not the case. It was more or less stimulated. One day, they wanted to become a famous horse that was known by every household. The hotel staff pointed out that the location of the first stable was very bad. Shuelai suggested to change it, but the staff said that there were no consecutive stables. There is no need for consecutive stables. They can share one. Even so, the staff still wanted to refuse. Shuelai waved his hand and gave a tip. Jia Sang was stunned by the way he spent money like water. If it were him, he would have been willing to buy the stable just now. After all, it was free. Shuelai shook his head and said, if you don't mind getting a bad one, then others will label you as someone who is only worthy of such a good one. Don't let others have the chance to treat you unfairly. Yolashanda nodded. In terms of being a person, Blondie was smarter. Jia Sang should learn from him. The riders and horses from overseas would come here in advance to adapt to the environment and climate. It would be better if they had time to run on the race course. The next morning, they arrived at the public race course. There were already many riders and horses practicing. From the scale of the race, it was obvious that this race was very grand. It was not comparable to the traditional races in the United Kingdom. No wonder people looked down on him, the champion of a traditional race in the United Kingdom. The riders on the race course more or less knew each other. They came here not to practice, but to socialize. Soon, someone riding a horse came over to chat with Shuelai. He said that he had watched his race and admired his riding skills. Would he like to ride a horse together? The genius rider, who had always been cold and arrogant, only smiled fakely when he received the invitation. When the other party invited him again, he raised his chin and said, "It's not that I don't want to accept your invitation, but I don't think my horse wants to ride with your horse." Shuelai glanced at the other party's horse. It was a dark brown horse. It looked very tall and handsome. It seemed to be very interested in Ao Daisai, but it was not a friendly kind of interest. From the look in its eyes and the way it bared its teeth, he knew that the other party was up to no good. This feeling was obvious to Ao Daisai. When the horse came over, he felt that it was provoking him. Let go. It was a challenge from a horse. Ao Daisai thought about it and hid behind Little Bear. Perhaps it felt that it was very unnecessary to face an ordinary horse outside the racecourse. What's wrong? Xiao Qishi asked Ao Daisai, whose head was leaning against his neck. A horse came to challenge me. Ao Daisai did not want to face it. It hid behind Little Bear lazily. What a rare request for help. It's okay. Let's ignore it. Xiao Qishi thought so too. There was no need to cause trouble outside the racecourse, but they could not let the other party bully Ao Daisai. Therefore, he stood in front of his boyfriend and rolled his eyes at the provocative brown horse. Was it only the other party that knew how to bare its teeth? Yolashanda thought to himself, I'm also good at spitting. With all due respect, horses were very intelligent and easy to train. This horse was so impolite that it bared its teeth at people as soon as it came over. It was obvious that the rider was not good enough. When the other party saw Ao Daisai hiding from his horse, he was complacent and commented with a smile, "Your horse looks a little timid." Hearing this, Shuelai did not even want to maintain his fake smile. "Excuse me." He called Jia Sang and asked him to lead the horse to the other side. He did not want to say a word to an impolite person. The playful Yelishanda and Ao Daisai chased each other on the grass. "Ha ha ha, he just said that you were timid." Ao Daisai did not think that he was timid, but he did not refute. He found that Little Bear was very happy when it laughed at him. In that case, it did not matter if he was laughed at. If he had to say something, he was indeed a little timid. Unknowingly, he was also very afraid of things. Yelishanda, who was playing on the grass, suddenly bumped into another horse. The horse was light brown and very handsome. "Sorry." Meeting a pair of big eyes, Xiao Qishi reflexively apologized. Then, she suddenly realized that it was useless to apologize verbally. She had to wag her tail to show friendliness. This was a very stable horse. After being bumped, it only moved a little to the side and did not overreact. Moreover, the horse seemed to be very smart. It quickly understood Xiao Qishi's goodwill and also wagged its tail. Xiao Qishi was very happy. See, most animals were very cute. They only had bad habits because of the bad environment. Hello, it was rare to meet a smart horse. Xiao Qishi shook her ears enthusiastically. Perhaps they could become playmates on the grass today. The gentle horse also twitched its ears. It seemed that it liked this reckless white horse. Perhaps the two of them could really become friends. But soon, the rider of the gentle horse came back. He looked at his horse, and then at the white horse that was not being led. He exaggeratedly covered his heart and said, "Oh, have you decided to play together?" The gentle horse looked up at the rider, as if asking for his opinion. Of course, he received a very positive encouragement. "Go, you two little cuties." "Oh, I actually have to agree." Yelishanda thought for a while and said to Ao Daisai, "Ao Daisai, I'm going out to play. The author has something to say." "Otis? With whom? Male or female? What time are you coming back?" "Little Bear, forget it, I'm not going." Chapter 248. Even if the rider would sometimes leave his horse for a moment, it would not be for long. This white horse, which had no one to lead it, seemed to be completely left alone by the rider. That must be because the white horse had a very good personality and never caused trouble, the gentle rider guessed. Reality proved that this was indeed the case. Not only did the rider have excellent self-management skills, he also called a friend over and called another black horse, Friesland, over. Well, it was also a horse without a rider. The rider was afraid that something would happen to the three little cuties, so he had no choice but to follow. He found that the black horse was very calm and had a calm temperament in the face of danger. He could not help but admire it. He wanted to know what the rider who owned such a horse was like. He thought that the rider must have a similar temperament and aura. The white horse next door was much more lively and had a good personality. He would occasionally turn his head to rub against his old friend, Friesland, and then tease his new friend, Xiayin. Xiayin was a gentle and introverted horse. He had never made friends. His name represented sunshine, warmth, and excellence. He was both, but he was not very good at social interactions. It was worth mentioning that the little white horse took Xiayin to play for the whole morning, but the riders of the two horses were nowhere to be seen. Because the grass field was too sunny, the young master was not used to the weather here. Jia Sang accompanied him to rest, and then forgot about the horses on the grass field. As for Coach Li, who was nicknamed the flower butterfly overseas, he probably flew off to God knows where. Xiaoyin's rider thought, this is too irresponsible. He had no choice but to lead the three horses to eat when it was time for lunch. This made him very busy. He had an inexplicable amount of work to do, but he was happy to do it. Of course, before he left, he told the staff to give him his phone number if a rider was looking for his horse. After the morning's training, the two horses wanted to go back to the stable by themselves. Suddenly, they heard that their new friend's rider wanted to take them to eat. Xiao Qishi immediately agreed. Was there need to think about it? Ao Daisai hesitated for a moment. He also thought that eating was more important. It seemed that he did not have the spirit of a contract in his heart. He would not leave with a stranger on the premise that the stranger was not trustworthy. In fact, Jia Sang always remembered that the two horses were still outside, but he thought that Coach Lee was there, so he focused on taking care of his senior who was uncomfortable in the sun. Jia Sang was very worried. The weather on the day of the competition was also very good. The event that they had signed up for was a long endurance race. He was afraid that Jia Sang would not be able to endure it. However, he did not dare to persuade his senior brother to give up. He could only scratch his face and scratch his cheeks. The weather here is too hot. He was more used to rainy weather. Jia Sang, who was used to staying on the plateau, felt that it was okay. He sent a message to Coach Lee, saying that he was going to have lunch with his senior brother and would most likely rest in his room in the afternoon. Coach Lee, okay, take good care of him. It seemed that he was very clear about Shuai Lai's problems. His new friend's rider took the two horses to eat and drink while waiting for a call or two. He would comfort them not to worry and that their horses were well taken care of. Ah, don't thank me because they are Xia Yin's friends. The rider had practiced this sentence many times, but he had never used it. He began to wonder and began to doubt himself. Was he the only one who valued Xia Yin more than his own life? Fortunately, the two horses seemed to recognize the stable they were in. When he saw them huddling together, the kind rider began to lose confidence again. The gentle Xia Yin stayed in front of his friend's stable, as if he was reluctant to leave and still wanted to play together. Looking at his new friend's big watery eyes, Yulashanda's heart melted. My dear little Xia Yin, let's meet in the competition. Run well, I won't let you win. Good luck. His nose moved around, and from time to time, he exhaled with different breaths. Perhaps Xia Yin could really feel it. His usually calm face began to show a lot of expressions. The two horses were communicating. The horseman grinned from ear to ear. Oh, great! He finally saw the expressive Shane. Bye-bye. After bidding farewell for a long time, the rider finally left with his horse. At the dinner table, the three of them finally gathered. They thought about the horses, and then realized that no one was taking care of the horses. Didn't they starve for the whole day? The three of them exclaimed at the same time, then stood up and ran to the stable to check. However, Yulashanda and Ao Daisai were not starving. They had eaten lunch and dinner and were now in the stable, kissing each other. The three of them quickly understood what had happened today through the staff's retelling. They broke out in a cold sweat and were very glad that Yulashanda had a good eye for friends. Then, they immediately called the kind rider and thanked him solemnly. They also agreed to meet the next morning at the field for lunch. Just like that, Yulashanda's friend left the open road, and they kept in contact after that. The arrogant rider who hid on Shuai Lai accidentally saw them eating together, and his expression became very ugly. The reason was because he felt that Shuai Lai would rather associate with a red-haired guy from a small country than accept his invitation. He felt insulted. The red-haired rider was called Dai Wei. He laughed when he was blatantly rolled his eyes, because he was already used to this kind of meaningless attack. You don't mind? Shuai Lai pointed at the man's contemptuous attitude. I mind, so I will win it back in the competition. Dai Wei laughed. Shuai Lai nodded to show his support and didn't say anything else. The list of contestants this time was very strong, and he wasn't very confident, but he could still beat that greasy guy. As Yulashanda and Xia Yin got along well, Jia Sang began to have the idea of learning English. He wanted to communicate with Xia Yin's rider. When he told his senior brother about this idea, his senior brother asked in surprise, "Why did you suddenly change your mind?" He remembered that when he asked Jia Sang to learn English, Jia Sang had a face of resistance. Jia Sang was embarrassed to tell him the reason, and then his senior brother said sarcastically, "So you want to make new friends? I was wondering why you became so enthusiastic." Jia Sang? Question mark. Shuai Lai guessed that his current mood was Ao Daisai's. As Yulashanda's personality was too lively, she could always make friends easily. On the other hand, Ao Daisai was very picky, and she was only close to Yulashanda. Now that Yulashanda had Xia Yin, he didn't know if Ao Daisai would be sad. Ao Daisai didn't restrict Little Bear from making friends. The magnanimous Little Bear would also turn his friends into Ao Daisai's friends, just like Tyrannosaurus Rex's neighbor. They had already passed the stage of being jealous over such things. Of course, it was fine to be jealous occasionally. Shuelai's words were harsh, but he still knocked on his junior brother's door at night and tutored him in English for 2 hours. The few days of waiting for the start of the competition passed very quickly, but the people in China were very anxious. They couldn't wait to see the results of the competition. The competition had already been announced. The first race that both the black and white horses would participate in was an 80-kilometer endurance race. Shuelai, who hadn't participated in a race for a year, was blessed by the heavens. The day of the competition was a cloudy day. The 2 horses, oh no, the 3 horses had already arrived at the venue and were in a very relaxed state. Yilashanda didn't think of greeting Xia-yin on the track, but the other party came over when he saw them. How should he put it? He and Ao Daisai must have run very fast. Sigh. He was afraid that Xia-yin would be affected. If their results were too far apart, would they not be able to be friends anymore? Xia-yin? His rider had brought him all the way to America to participate in the competition because he wasn't weak either. Otherwise, he wouldn't even have been able to afford the plane ticket. Before the start of the competition, a large number of media outlets had already gathered at the venue to report on the competition. The Chinese people who had already entered the venue also raised their cameras and started taking pictures. They even wanted to go up and ask for a photo, but they didn't have the courage. Luckily, Jia Sang would greet his compatriots when he saw them in the crowd. His smile was too bright. Pictures of him and Yilashanda were continuously sent back to China. Of course, the cold senior brother and Ao Daisai were also included. Yilashanda's hairstyle today is unexpectedly neat. He looks like a little boy. Ha ha. Be careful, Yilashanda might bite you. Isn't it because the child is too wild when he runs? Who remembers the time when the wrist guard fell off? Look, the 2 horses' hairstyles are the same. Ha ha ha. I suspect that it's Jia Sang's doing. Why can't it be senior brother? He looks more like a perfectionist. Shoo. When senior brother was taking care of the 2 horses alone, the horses' hairstyles weren't exquisite. Aoyu is a couple. Don't wake me up. Why are they focusing on the hairstyles? I don't know. The weather today is good, very suitable for long-distance running. The netizens who only cared about the competition discussed the competition seriously, even though they also felt that the 2 horses were becoming more and more homoerotic. But it didn't matter, as long as it didn't affect the speed of the race. On the field, the horsemen and horses were already being broadcasted. They would enter the field in groups. Among the 3 groups, Aoyu was in front and Xia-yin was behind. Every group that entered the field would have their own fans cheering and cheering, including Yilashanda and Ao Daisai. When it was Xia-yin's turn, everyone seemed to have not heard of him, and the field became quiet. But soon, Ao Daisai and Yilashanda's fans cheered and applauded to welcome Xia-yin. It wasn't known if Xia-yin was touched, but his rider was very touched. It turned out that when Xia-yin's name was announced, Yilashanda stood on the grass and did a tap dance to welcome his friend. Ao Daisai's rider, Shuelai, was also clapping, giving Xia-yin, who was competing for the first time, enough face. When all the groups were in position, the atmosphere was quiet and serious. Everyone was waiting for the gunshot. Suddenly, with a bang, the still scene was broken. The mighty horses didn't fight to be first, because there was a full 80 kilometers to run, and the experienced horsemen knew that they weren't in a hurry. First of all, they had to make sure that they and their horses weren't blocked or hit, which meant that they had to adapt to the track environment. Secondly, they had to find a rhythm and stabilize their condition. An unstable horse would appear to be a little flustered and couldn't find the right way to move forward. At this time, they needed the rider's guidance. Yilashanda and Ao Daisai walked side by side without any panic. When the other horses squeezed over, they didn't hesitate to knock them back. When they turned their heads and saw Xia-yin being squeezed by several horses, they exchanged a tacit look. The author has something to say. Once again, it's good to be Little Bear's friend. Chapter 249. The track was packed. The mild-tempered Xia Yin did not receive any orders from his rider, so he could only play it safe. But soon his situation changed. Alexander and Otis, who he had just made friends with over the past 2 days, crossed the layers of obstacles and pushed the horses away from him. Their actions attracted the stares of the surrounding riders. "What are you looking at?" Yulashanda thought to himself. "I've never seen a hooligan before. What's wrong with opening a path for my friends? It's none of your business." The space around Xia Yin quickly became empty. He finally had a place to put his hooves. He was also very happy to see his friend moving forward with him. The sound of hooves coming from his nose represented happiness. His bright and gentle eyes seemed to be filled with gratitude. "You're welcome." Yulashanda stood on Xia Yin's left. Ao Daisai stood on Xia Yin's right. Their maneuvers shocked all the riders on the horses, including Dai Wei. At this moment, he was not stupid enough to not know that this was not the intention of the riders. He already knew that these two horses were very smart and had unexpectedly strong self-management skills, but he did not expect them to be so opinionated. Their riders did not have any objections. Jia Sang and Shui Lai were of course very surprised, but more than that, they were touched. Horses were really cute creatures. Besides their dedication to winning the championship, they also loved their friends. At this moment, the two teenagers from China smiled at Dai Wei. Obviously, they had accepted their horse's decision and were even encouraging them. Being treated like this, Dai Wei was very grateful and sighed at his own luck. Oh no, Xia Yin's luck. The three steeds were naturally very eye-catching, and the riders who were competing with them were probably not in a good mood. What? They were competing in a small group? Organizers, come take care of them. Strictly speaking, this was not against the rules. The organizers could not do anything about it. Every year, 30% of the riders participating in the competition were from China. They also formed small groups brazenly. There was no problem for the three riders from other countries to be a little closer. With his two friends leading the way, Xia Yin gradually got used to the track. At the same time, his steps became more confident. There was already a group of riders ahead of them. They were running in the middle, and the space gradually became more spacious. When Xia Yin no longer needed the protection of Yulashanda and Ao Daisai, they tacitly ran in front and closely followed the first column. Then, they began to discuss how they should run the 80 kilometers race today. Xia Yin was also not in a hurry. He followed behind his two friends in a very Buddhist manner. However, being Buddhist did not mean that he was a pushover. When a horse squeezed past him, he was no longer gentle, but boldly fierce. Yulashanda, Ao Daisai, did you see that? There are a lot of Chinese fans here today. Most of them are your fans. Ao Daisai had a high EQ and said, "It should be because you have more fans." "Let's not compare this. That's not the main point." Xiao Qishi said, as if she had been injected with chicken blood. "It's not easy for domestic fans to make a trip here. The tickets are expensive, and so is the accommodation. We can't let them go home disappointed." Ao Daisai heard this and comforted his little cutie with certainty. "Yes, that won't happen. The prize money will definitely be ours." There was no doubt about that. Of course the prize money will be ours. I mean, we should make the race more exciting and let them enjoy it from the beginning to the end. What do you think? Yulashanda glanced at the fans waving at her on both sides of the track. Suddenly, she was eager to give a try. She could not suppress the idea in her heart. Ao Daisai narrowed his eyes and thought about it. However, he was also a little surprised. If he guessed correctly, Yulashanda should start sprinting now to get rid of these competitors. However, in his mind, Little Bear was too lazy to go all out. She should not go all out like this, right? "Well, what do you think we should do?" Ao Daisai decided to ask directly. Yulashanda, let's rush to the front now. Although Xia Yin might not be able to catch up, she did not care so much. The rest of the race depended on Xia Yin. Even if she did not win the prize in the end, it would be a good experience. After all, the horses in the race were all very strong. Okay, Ao Daisai agreed without hesitation. He never doubted Yulashanda's decision. "Then let's go." He hoped that Little Bear would not complain about being tired during the 80-kilometer race. However, if she really did not want to run, there was nothing he could do about it. Yes, I have run a long distance on the grassland. Can you do it? Xiao Qishi did not know that Ao Daisai was worried about her. Instead, she was worried about Ao Daisai. The other party did not answer. Instead, she used practical actions to show that this was a piece of cake. The black horse sped up and caught up with the horse in front of it. Shuelai was puzzled by its sudden acceleration. What's wrong? Shuelai and Ao Daisai had been working together for a long time. He thought that Ao Daisai was not the aggressive type. The rider who was overtaken was very surprised. However, his surprise did not stop there. Not long after, the other horse overtook him from the other side with a whoosh. The two horses sped up at the same time and moved one place forward. The fans on both sides of the track exclaimed in surprise. The people who were watching the live broadcast in China also exclaimed in surprise. The sleepy bugs suddenly disappeared, who knew that they had already mentally prepared themselves for the final 20 kilometers of the race. They did not expect the stable black and white horses to start so early. However, they did not expect the race to be so exciting right from start. Good heavens! Are they not going to let us look away? It was indeed fun to run to the front early, but required a lot of energy to maintain speed. Could Yulashanda and Ao Daisai really do it? Everyone was worried. They felt that Jia Sang and Shuelai were too aggressive. This race was not going to be easy. There were too many strong opponents on the same track. The safest way to race was to preserve their strength. If Yulashanda and Ao Daisai went to the front at this time, they would become the target of everyone. There was no guarantee that the riders behind them would try their best to catch up. If that happened, everyone would have a hard time running, unless all the riders were willing to let them stay in the lead. However, with two young Chinese riders who were less than 20 years old leading, could they really convince the riders? Definitely not. Not long after they took the lead, the rider who was overtaken began to accelerate. He had a mental breakdown. Little Xia had always been known for his steadiness. His reflexes were a little slow, and when he saw that his two friends had run away, he immediately felt that it was meaningless to continue running like this. So he swung his tail and sped forward. Dai Wei's mouth formed an O shape. He swore that he did not give the order to speed up. Xiaoyin, the black and white horse in front, ran faster and faster. Xiaoyin did not hear Dai Wei's exclamation. He was focused on keeping up with his friend. After being overtaken by another horse, the rider who had a mental breakdown felt even worse. Why? He thought to himself, wasn't this just the start of the race? God, this was not a short distance race. This was an 80-kilometer long distance race. Okay, but no matter how crazy he was, the race for the first column was getting more and more intense. The top three were locked in a fierce battle. Currently, the two horses that suddenly sped up, one black and one white, were in first place. The three horses were tied. If this was what Yulashanda meant by exciting, then he had done it. The Chinese fans were cheering at this moment. To hell with hiding his strength and conserving his strength. He was in first place from the start of the race. Wasn't he good? The fans watching through the screen were already very excited, let alone being affected by the atmosphere at the scene. Even their hands holding their phones were shaking. At this time, the main group of horses had already gone far away. The fans were mainly watching the race on the big screen. The black and white horses that suddenly sped up received a close-up and another introduction. This is the white horse from China, Yulashanda and his rider, Jia Sang, and the black horse, Ao Daisai and his rider, Shuelai. They are sandwiching the famous general from Germany, Ralph, in the middle. It looks like they will be running parallel for a while. This kind of strategy was incomprehensible. They only knew that the black and white horses had an unusual tacit understanding. Their running speed was almost the same, and even their steps were surprisingly overlapping. The black and white fans cheered. Then, the close-up came to the back of the three horses. The one who was closely following them was actually the inconspicuous Xia Yin. He was coming up. Xia Yin. Xia Yin. Was there going to be another scene of the three friends running side by side? Dai Wei finally understood Xia Yin's purpose. He wanted to follow his friend and become as dazzling as his friend. It was hard to imagine that the introverted Xiaoyin would choose to do this in such a race. However, Dai Wei was proud of Xiaoyin. If his compatriots in China were to watch this race, he believed that even more people would be proud of Xiaoyin. After hearing the broadcast, Yilishanda and Ao Daisai also knew that Xiaoyin had arrived. They immediately felt happy. It was good that he came. No, they would not be running parallel with their opponent. Ao Daisai. Yilishanda waved his tail wildly and shouted at Ao Daisai, who was one horse away. The two horses tacitly sped up again. The drone captured them, overtaking the opponent in the middle by a horse's length. The fans held their breath. Could it be? The announcer was also slightly excited. Yilishanda and Ao Daisai have sped up again. They are now tied for first place. Let's take a look at Ralph. Has he started to chase after them? Very good. He hasn't. This is very consistent with Ralph's usual behavior. Wait. The famous general with rich racing experience was overtaken by two horses. He was indeed calm, no matter how one looked at it. This was not a good time to chase after two horses that had taken the wrong medicine. They were running so fiercely at the start of the race. What else could it be other than taking the wrong medicine? Perhaps the audience wanted to see an intense race, but the people involved knew that this race needed to be planned carefully. Just as they were thinking about this, a light brown horse moved up the ranks again. He followed the black and white horse all the way and gathered his courage to fly forward. The rider who was overtaken was speechless. Did all the horses take the wrong medicine today? There really was no need for that. The riders were in disbelief, including Dai Wei. He felt that Xiaoyin was especially fierce today. It was as if she had released the little beast in her heart. Xiaoyin, you have to be steady. Don't force yourself just to be in the limelight. The audience was the happiest. They announced that this race was the most exciting long-distance race they had ever seen. They were looking forward to the next development. As the black and white horse and the light brown horse were too fierce, the racetrack became their stage. The big screen was occupied by the three horses for a long time. All the fans, this is awesome. Xiaoyin, brother little bear, take me flying. Chapter 250. Even though the audience and fans were excited, in the eyes of the other riders, the three of them were undoubtedly reckless. The coach must be mad, right? He might even have to prepare a heart reliever pill. The riders behind them were not in a hurry to catch up. They were waiting for the three horses in front to exhaust their energy and disappear into the crowd. Almost all the experienced riders thought so. They had been famous for a long time and had rich experience in competitions. They did not seem to care about impulsive kids in their teens or 20s. Yilishanda, Ao Daisai, and Xiaoyin are still in the lead. The riders behind them are very calm and do not seem to have any plans to overtake them. They are indeed famous generals. It seems that they are very calm. I can foresee that this is going to be a competition between the old and the new. We can see that the three of them are occupying the first three positions. They're so energetic, but it is not even 20 kilometers into the race. I am really worried for them. When the announcer expressed his worries without any hesitation, the excited audience became slightly nervous. The cheering stopped, as if indicating that there would be new changes in the competition soon. Looking at the three teenagers who were in the limelight, their respective coaches were furious. What was the use of being in the limelight now? They were participating in this competition for the final victory. This must be Yilishanda's fault. Coach Lee was very clear that although Ao Daisai was the strongest and Xiaoyin was the most gentle and obedient in the small group, they were all easily led away by Yilishanda. Yesterday, when they were playing on the grass together, he had a clue. Fortunately, Coach Lee's mentality was very good. He treated this competition as training. He was no longer obsessed with winning the championship. When he relaxed and watched the competition, his brows were no longer furrowed. Instead, he smiled and raised his hands, cheering with the audience. The other riders' coaches looked askance. Was this peer mad? TSK. Thinking about it, if their riders were so reckless, they would also go crazy. Who knew that after waiting for a long time, The three horses were still far in the lead. Some people could not help but start to admire the potential of these three horses. If he could improve his competition experience, his future would be limitless. What they didn't know was that the three leading horses weren't actually in a sprinting state. They were just running at their normal speed. What they didn't know was that the three leading horses weren't sprinting at all. When it was time to sprint, it was a whole new level of speed. Yulashanda felt that he was fine, but he was a little worried about his friend, Xiayin, who was behind him. That girl looked obedient, but she was actually quite stubborn. Since she had followed them at this time, she probably wanted to be with them. Riders pursue speed because they have their own goals, rewards, or fame. But what about horses? What exactly was the goal that would make a horse use up all of its strength and fight like this? Most of the horses didn't know that. It was just that their partners wanted them to run a little faster, so they ran a little faster. On this track full of thorns, the horses were fulfilling the dreams of humans, not their own dreams. Thinking of this, Yulashanda felt relieved. He believed that Xiayin was not like this usually. She must have listened to Dai Wei and finished many races steadily. But this time was different. Xiayin had her own opinions. He was running for himself. Charge! In this world, there was something that was worth a horse running with all of its strength and pure friendship. The three horses that had broken free were like wild horses on the grassland. They had already left the main group. It was as if they only had themselves and their friends in their world. They had already forgotten that this was a race, and they had also forgotten about their opponents. They only ran for the sake of running. The dopamine produced by the exercise made the horses feel excited and happy. David, who was on horseback, swore that he had never felt such a wild summer before. His body was about to become wavy. Oh my God, Xiayin! He inadvertently realized that the main group behind him had fallen behind by a lot. Although he felt that the future was uncertain and he was a little worried, he had to admit that this was really satisfying. Dai Wei had never felt so good since he became a professional horseman. Now, the whole world's eyes were on him. Thank you, thank you. He was flying. The horsemen who were lagging behind occasionally looked up and realized that they could no longer see the first column. They couldn't help but feel uneasy. Where were the three horses? After the initial shock, they calmed down and comforted themselves. It was fine. They might just be a little behind. As long as they charged forward, they would be able to catch up. The veteran was indeed a veteran. He was very calm. However, some of the new generation had already started to lose their rhythm. In front of them was a young, genius horseman, and beside them was a veteran who was ready to overtake them. They had no chance of winning at all. The new generation's Shui Ma, who still had hope of winning the championship, stepped forward and became the second column. They pushed the veteran horsemen behind them. Even if they couldn't win the championship, at least they had taken the lead. Several of the popular candidates suddenly saw the horses' butts. **T. They felt that the rhythm of the competition had been completely disrupted. These people didn't play by the rules at all. If they had been overtaken by the three suicidal horses, they could still remain calm. However, now that they were squeezed into the third column, their line of defense was a little shaky. They began to hesitate whether to stick to their usual style of competition or to re-examine their strategy according to the situation. This was a serious problem. The coaches outside the field were also quite anxious. This competition was different from all the previous competitions, and the culprits were the three horses that had rushed to the front from the beginning of the competition. They wondered how they were doing now. Many people hoped that they would quickly tire themselves out and let the competition return to normal. The organizers couldn't keep the big screen on the three horses. Next, they actively broadcasted the situation of the main group. They were very happy that the second batch of young horsemen who dared to charge had arrived. Could the veteran horsemen still remain calm? What the audience wanted to know more was how this competition would develop in the end. Would there be more interesting developments? Let's bring the camera back to the three horses in the first column. It's surprising that they are still running at a very fast speed. It seems that they are not tired yet. What kind of endurance is this? Can they really last until the finish line? The horsemen who were lagging behind were in despair. The three terrifying horses in front of them didn't show any signs of fatigue. They had already run about 25 kilometers. There was no hurry. Many horsemen quietly changed their plans. They decided to start the sprint in the last 30 kilometers, a full 10 kilometers in advance, however. The next broadcast made their mentality collapse. It turned out that the three horses in front of them had almost finished half of the race. In other words, there was no time to wait for them to reach the 50 kilometers mark. Everyone's mentality exploded. The horsemen who originally wanted to preserve their strength no longer cared about their strategy. They urged their horses almost at the same time and entered the sprint stage in advance. God, their opponents were almost finished. What was the use of preserving their strength? Of course, they had to run faster. Because of the announcer's words, the entire track was in an uproar. The horsemen couldn't believe it and suspected that the announcer had made a false report. At the same time, they had no choice but to participate in the competition and welcome this extremely despairing race. The announcer didn't lie. The three horses who were leading the charge were about to finish half of the race with an incredible endurance. Their very stable rhythm and state seemed to be affecting their companions. Yes, Yelishanda couldn't say out loud. Xiaoyin, you have to run like this. Maintain a stable rhythm. Let your muscles remember your running state. Pay attention to your breathing. Therefore, he could only set an example and show Xiaoyin the secret of his super endurance. In order to keep up with their footsteps, the smart Xiaoyin seemed to copy their rhythm without anyone teaching him. Footsteps, breathing, running continuously. It was as if his body had been taken over by an invisible force. Not only did Xiaoyin not feel tired, he actually became more and more excited as he ran. It was as if the wind was supporting his horse's hooves. His horsemen were so moved that they were about to cry. They felt that Xiaoyin must have used all his strength to lead them to this point. In this way, even if they didn't get a place in the race, they wouldn't have any regrets. This is really a new race. The announcer couldn't help but sigh at the changes in the track. He felt that today's tickets would definitely be recognized by all the spectators from the bottom of their hearts. That's right. The changes in the track left all the spectators dumbfounded. The entire race had just reached the middle of the field. The sprint stage, which usually only appeared in the last 20 kilometers, was happening in advance. All the horsemen were as if they had been injected with chicken blood and crazily urged their horses to run. Seeing how they were chasing, people didn't know if there was a moment of regret that they didn't catch up at the beginning. The carelessness in the first half of the race caused the second half of the race to be in a sorry state. This was the most appropriate description for the horsemen. However, they still had a chance. At least they could fight for third place. Several of the popular candidates for the championship were already in despair. They never thought that in the end, these old rivals of theirs would actually be fighting for third place. However, it was still better than not winning a single prize. Thus, very soon, there was a new change in the track. Several of the veterans successfully overtook the second column and became the popular candidates for third place. Why did they say that? Because the black and white horses kept moving at the same speed. It was very likely that they would be tied for first place. The premise was that they weren't tired. Several of the veterans weren't willing to just take third place. They gritted their teeth and chased after the third column. Gradually, their speed increased at a speed visible to the naked eye. The spectators watched with excitement. They shouted, clapped, and cheered for these handsome horses. Their efforts were not in vain. The veterans gradually closed the distance. At this point, the entire race had reached its most intense stage. The announcer's voice began to rise as he announced that the race had entered the final round. At this speed, the second column could possibly catch up with the first column. They didn't believe that the three horses could really last that long. Yelishanda, you don't know anything about strength. Not only were their stamina that long, but they hadn't even reached the sprint stage. Under the sun, the white horse's strong body didn't slack at all. He exhaled rhythmically, and the rhythm of his hooves on the ground was the same as the black horse next to him. He had always been criticized for not raising his legs properly. Now, every step he took was raised high. Was he tired? Of course, he was tired. However, it wasn't to the point where he could still run. Under the sun, the black horse's hair was like a glossy black piece, thinly covering his muscles. As he ran and tightened his muscles, they shone brightly. Everyone was stunned by the power that Otis exuded. So this was the charm of Friesland. No, this wasn't Friesland's charm. It was Ao Daisai's own charm. He was strong, humble, and supported his friends unconditionally. Even if he was one step away from winning the championship, he still maintained his speed and kept pace with his friends. Time passed slowly. At the last 10 kilometers, the second column gritted their teeth and finally saw hope. However, this was just another round of despair. Maintaining the iron triangle, in the last 10 kilometers, he started his sprint plan. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, they suddenly sped up, pushing the atmosphere of the competition to its peak. Everyone was stunned. Could it be that the 70 kilometers wasn't a sprint? That was just their normal speed? That seemed to be the case. When the three horses entered the sprint stage, they pulled away from the second column at a crazy speed. This scene was enough to make one's scalp tingle. What kind of terrifying opponents were these? They made the second column's veterans taste despair once again. All the Chinese fans watching the competition raised their arms and cheered. They were so excited that they almost cried. God, what could be more exciting than a sprint at the beginning of the competition? Yes, it was to sprint again after the 70-kilometer sprint. Looking at the widening gap, the veterans of the second column could only look at Yolanda and the others' backs no matter how hard they gritted their teeth. They knew that the result was set. The next 123 places would be in the bag of Yolanda's team. Yolanda indeed thought so. He shouted, "Ao Daisai, you go." However, Ao Daisai wasn't willing. He didn't plan to surpass his little bear. At the last step, he lovingly placed Yolanda on the throne. Yolanda was angry and amused. Damn it. One day, he would beat Ao Daisai with his own strength. As for now, he would enjoy the victory. Not long after the first and second place crossed the finish line, Xiaoyin, the light brown horse that followed them, leaped and created another wave of cheers. Yolanda, congratulations to yourself for winning first place. Congratulations to Ao Daisai for winning second place. Congratulations to Xiaoyin for winning third place. Xiaoyin's results are real. He's amazing. The author has something to say. It's reasonable to suspect that Ao Daisai doesn't want to share the prize with others. Chapter 251. No one would have thought that the black and white horses, which were running in sync with each other, would have a clear winner the moment they crossed the finish line. The announcer was stunned and lost his voice for a moment. He could only regretfully announce the results of the first, second, and third places. This was bad news for the riders behind. As a result, their 80 kilometers run was in vain. They did not even get third place. However, they still had to persevere and finish the race. The three horses that had already made it to the finish line gradually slowed down on the track. The sound of their panting drowned out the cries of the riders on the back of the horses. They had been jolted for 80 kilometers on horseback. Moreover, it was an 80-kilometer sprint. If they were not so young, their bones would have already been broken. Shuai wanted to curse. Even if he had gotten second place, it could not make his sour face become warmer. God, he had been thinking about how to cooperate with Ao Daisai and how not to fall off the horse. Other than that, he did not perform any of the functions that a professional rider should perform. Ao Daisai did not need any instructions from him. It was like a wild horse that had escaped its reins. Yes, Yolanda. It was all Yolanda's fault. Jia Sang, who was on the back of the white horse, was also complaining incessantly. His eyebrows were furrowed, but at the same time, his mouth was wide open. Because he had gotten first place, he did not disappoint everyone's expectations. His senior brother had said that the prize money for this competition was higher. Therefore, the joy of getting first place immediately overshadowed the pain on his body. He raised his hands high and turned his head to look for Shuai. "Senior brother, we got first place." "Yes." His senior brother, who was used to the wind and waves, only responded with a grimace. He was not too happy. Ouch! Because his whole body was in pain. Jaseng chuckled. Compared to his senior brother, who had been spoiled since childhood, he had already been beaten up. Therefore, this pain was nothing. He comforted his senior brother and then turned to look for Daiwei. Daiwei was hugging his horse excitedly. Yulashanda and Ao Daisai were no longer running fast. Xiaoyin finally reached his good friend's side. Then, he received a warm kiss from Yulashanda. He looked very happy. Yulashanda did not favor one over the other. He gave Xiaoyin as many kisses as he gave Ao Daisai. He wanted to let the other party know that he was just expressing his happiness and blessings to his friend. There was no need to be jealous. Ao Daisai already knew Yulashanda very well. He generously returned the kiss and did not mind Xiaoyin following the two of them. After every competition, some people were happy and some were sad. The local media, who were very concerned about this competition, were already prepared to report the good news. In their opinion, the local riders would at least win 2 or 3 awards. However, when the results came out, they could not maintain their smiles. Everyone's mind was filled with question marks. Why? How could this be? Were the results confirmed? Was it authoritative? Compared to the embarrassment of the foreign media, the local media's report was very good. When they heard the news, they immediately sent out news to congratulate the 2 riders who competed overseas. They also bought the broadcast rights of the competition so that their countrymen could also watch such a wonderful competition. Moreover, Jaseng was an Olympic rider. His popularity was very high. The local media wanted to interview him very much. Unfortunately, he was still overseas. The reporters found another way. They changed to interviewing Qin and Fu Siyu, who were going to participate in the Olympics next year. During this time, they asked more about Jaseng's story. Netizens, staff members. Fortunately, the 2 seniors did not mind. They had just learned that Jaseng and Shuelai had won overseas. They were also very excited. Why would they mind the reporters talking to them about this matter? At the same time, the riders and horses who had exhausted their energy on the track were resting. Although the results of the competition were irreversible, it was worth considering if they were in good condition to participate in the next round. Having a good mentality was equivalent to winning half the competition. Even if the riders with a good mentality lost this competition, they would still shine in other competitions. On the other hand, if the rider with a bad mentality, it would be very annoying. For example, a rider from another country who deliberately bumped into Jaseng in the aisle of the stable. If it were not for the hostile gaze of the rider, Jaseng would have forgotten about the unpleasant episode before the competition. Today, Shuelai was not around. She was still in bed because of overexertion. Jaseng had nothing to do after breakfast, so he accepted Dai Wei's invitation to take the horse out for a walk. He did not expect to encounter such a situation. Because of the language barrier, he knew that the other party was doing it on purpose. However, there was nothing he could do. Moreover, he did not want to cause trouble. Coward! Jaseng's tolerance worsened the other party's viciousness. Not only did he scold him, but he also showed indecent gestures. Yulashanda and Ao Daisai were not willing. If they did not react when they bumped into Jaseng just now, they could say that they were bitten by a dog. But now, they could not just stand by and watch Jaseng be bullied. Of course, they could not hurt the other party. If the horse did something that hurt the rider, it might be banned from the competition. Ao Daisai, don't be impulsive. Let me do it. Xiao Qishi calmed her male friend who wanted to step forward and said, "You might be banned from the competition if you attack him." However, Ao Daisai did not care, because he was not participating in the Olympics. No, Xiao Qishi did not want Ao Daisai to sacrifice his career. If he hurt someone, he would be labeled as a violent person. From then on, he would never be able to compete again. Why would he do that for a piece of sh*t? In the blink of an eye, the white horse suddenly rushed in front of the black horse and gave to the piece of sh*t who bumped into Jaseng. Suddenly, a stream of saliva flew towards the back of that person's head. Coincidentally, this scene was seen by other passers-by. Immediately, there was a burst of laughter in the corridor. That person felt a chill on his neck and stopped in his tracks. In disbelief, He turned around slowly and clenched his fist. However, Yolashanda was not afraid. If this person dared to make a move, his career would be over. Taking advantage of the fact that the other person did not dare to make a move, Yolashanda's revenge was not over yet. He turned his horse around, raised his tail, and farted loudly at the other person. Perhaps because he felt that he had been greatly insulted, that person's face instantly became extremely ugly. The veins on his clenched fist stood out. The surrounding passers-by could hear him cursing nonstop. It was as if he wanted to eat the 2 Chinese horses and the Chinese person alive. However, he did not dare to do anything. He could only wave his fists and curse in the air. Yolashanda and Ao Daisai were very glad that Jia Sang did not understand. The two of them were like primary school students, leisurely grinning and laughing. He bounced back. Even the passers-by could see that the 2 horses' expressions were despicable, especially the one that farted loudly at the human. "Hey, shut up." Dai Wei came over to Jia Sang. When he saw that Jia Sang was being bullied, he immediately stepped forward to stop the other person. "It seems that you don't want to continue competing. How about we fulfill your wish?" That person pointed at Yolashanda. "He spat at me and farted at me. He insulted me. I want to sue him." Dai Wei: "Okay, go ahead and sue him. We will accept your lawyer's letter at any time. Of course, you will also receive our lawyer's letter. This is not a threat. This will definitely happen." Then, as expected, Dai Wei left with Jia Sang. He said to Jia Sang, "That person's actions just now have already violated you. I think you can. Forget it. I will talk to Shui. He will not let you suffer." Jia Sang, ? Because he did not understand English. He looked at the other person with a smile. Although he could not communicate with Dai Wei, he could communicate with a horse. He stroked his obedient little Xiaoyin and made a horse sound. Dai Wei smiled helplessly. He was puzzled. How could such a sharp person like Shui Lai have such an obedient and cute junior brother? Shui Lai, who was still lazing in bed, heard that Jia Sang was being bullied. He immediately sat up with his messy blonde hair and put on his bathrobe. The next step was to contact a lawyer and ask for the surveillance video from the hotel to send a lawyer's letter. However, they soon heard that the other party had threatened to sue Yolashanda. Oh no, it was not a threat. It was real. What? Yolashanda was stunned when he heard that he was being sued. What happened? Didn't he just spit and fart? Why did he get sued? Originally, they could leave America after resting for a few days and continue to participate in the next competition. However, because of this small incident, they could only stay temporarily. Because of their recent popularity, the news of riders suing each other in court was leaked by the media. More precisely, one horseman sued another horseman, and the accused horseman sued the horse of the accused horseman. When this report was published, the people who read the newspapers laughed. They did not treat this as a serious news report. They felt it was funny. Before the court date, the Chinese media also knew about this incident. They were worried and reported that they would support Jia Sang fully. They even asked him if he needed any help. The netizens were not worried because they had evidence of Jia Sang's crimes. Yolashanda's crimes might only result in a fine. But Jia Sang was different. He might even lose his career. Another netizen said, "Don't be so sure. It's hard to guarantee that the judge will not lose his job." If Jia Sang's career was really over, I believe many people in China would also want Yolashanda to be banned from competing. Netizen, Tisk, TSK. His life is worse than a horse. He is so shameless. Yolashanda used the whole day to digest the fact that he was sued. Whoa, he was sued. He grumbled to Otis unhappily. "Oh God, I've lived an honest life. I have saved hostages, dealt with drugs, and made great contributions to the environmental protection of the world. Who would have thought that I would be sued in court one day? How can this happen?" Ao Daisai kept comforting him. "Don't worry. We have money." Blondie said that Yolashanda's actions were not considered overboard. At most, he would be fined some money. That's right. They had just won a lot of prize money. But Ao Daisai had a question. He did not know if he should ask, "What contributions have you made to the global environment?" Yolashanda: "I had picked up rubbish from the sea." Otis suddenly realized that picking up toys that he wanted to play with on the surface of the sea was considered a great contribution. Actually, it was not only that. When they saw animals trapped by fishing nets or rubbish, they would go forward to help them. Then, they would dump the dangerous rubbish aside. Of course, it was a great contribution. After the initial uncertainty about the lawsuit passed, Xiao Qishi's state of mind returned to normal. He even looked forward to the arrival of that day. After all, the other party's actions were even worse. They would not just fine him. He heard that many lawyers in China wanted to come over and help. He felt warm in his heart, but there was no need. Blondie's lawyer was said to be very good. He had heard the conversation between the lawyer and Jia Sang. He was really good, but when it was his turn, the lawyer did not say anything to him. He just patted his head and left. Yilashanda, shouldn't you say something? Jia Sang felt very guilty for implicating Yilashanda. In order to relax, they took the horse out for a walk. It was not unusual for the horse to walk on the street. Yilashanda was in a good mood after being able to walk around the colorful night market. He excitedly picked a string of silver bells for himself and asked Ao Daisai happily, "Is this nice? Or are the colorful ones better?" Ao Daisai looked at the cute little bear gently. "Then why don't you just take all of them?" He had just won a generous prize money, so he was very generous with his little cutie. Yes, Yilashanda wanted all of them. He would wear them on the day of the trial to anger those scumbags. Ao Daisai's diary. Little Bear was unhappy after being sued. Today, I accompanied him to the night market to buy jewelry. It was hard to believe that he was a good person. Yilashanda's case officially began. The plaintiff's lawyer began to count his crimes. Although he looked very serious, his heart was wavering. *T. What kind of medicine did he take that day to accept this case? He had a feeling that after this case, his name would be circulated in the industry for a period of time. The client wanted the horse to be banned from racing forever. If it was just spitting or farting, it seemed that it would be difficult to pin a crime so bad that it would be banned. Unless the defendant's saliva contained sulfuric acid and his fart contained poison. The prosecution's lawyer, *T. July 11th, 10 a.m., the defendant was at the Pegasus Hotel, blah, 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 blah. However, he still had to try. The audience, HHHHH. The judge, HHHHH. The jury, HHHHH. When the prosecution's lawyer used a serious tone to mention the various bad acts that the defendant had committed against the plaintiff, the laughter in the courtroom could not be stopped. The only person who did not laugh was the plaintiff, whose face was sour. What was so funny? He thought that this was the truth and that the judge would definitely uphold justice for him and let the horse get the punishment it deserved. Of course, the heavier the punishment, the better. But what the plaintiff did not expect was that no one had any ill feelings towards this naughty white horse. The judge looked at the defendant and said, "My dear, do you admit that you have done these things to this poor gentleman?" The judge did not use any adjectives to describe these actions, because in his opinion, they were not bad at all. Yilashanda looked at the judge and blinked his big, watery eyes. Although he did not say anything else, the judge could already feel his honesty. "Oh, very good. You are very brave to admit your mistakes." The judge smiled like a kind grandfather. The plaintiff began to panic. Why was the judge today a kind old man? He would not be biased towards a poor American citizen who had been spat on by a bad Chinese horse. Then the judge said, "Yilashanda, your name is Yilashanda, right? Are you willing to apologize to this gentleman?" "Yilashanda? Don't even think about it." Fortunately, the judge was just joking. He asked the defendant's lawyer to speak. "Do you have anything to add?" Obviously, everyone liked Yilashanda very much. The defendant's lawyer smiled and shook his head. "No, please decide." The judge nodded. 2 minutes later, he announced the final result of the case. The white horse Yilashanda had spat on the poor gentleman's clothes, so the judge wanted Yilashanda's owner to compensate the gentleman for a new set of clothes, as well as some compensation for emotional distress. "That's it." The plaintiff immediately said, "Mr. Judge, I disagree. This horse, with such a bad personality, should be banned from the race. The quiet court was disrupted. Countless people rolled their eyes at the plaintiff, including the judge. "Please be quiet. I did not ask you to speak." Then he said, "In response to your request, I think the International Horse Federation will give you a satisfactory answer after today." 10 minutes later, the second case began. It was the same audience and the same judge and jury, but the plaintiff and the defendant had changed seats. The cute white horse was led to the audience. Compared to the first case, this case was obviously much more serious. The lawyers from both sides went back and forth, and the atmosphere gradually heated up. The other side wanted Yolashanda to be banned. Coincidentally, the other side wanted to do the same. They would not let the other side go just because of a little compensation. As the case became clearer and clearer, the audience finally understood what had happened. Yolashanda had only fought back to defend his partner's dignity. He was not wrong. He was very brave. The defendant was questioned about whether he admitted to his actions. He admitted to it, but argued that Jia Sang had offended him first. However, he could not produce any evidence. The other side produced witnesses and evidence. The surveillance video was played in court. As they listened to it, the audience and the judge's faces darkened. Was the defendant's head caught in the door? He had committed such a terrible act and still dared to sue the other party's horse. Maybe his brain was not developed properly. Or maybe he thought that the judge would side with him because of his nationality and cover up for his actions. There were too many idiots like him in the country. The results of the trial were obvious. Mr. Winfart received a fair trial. He paid a heavy price for his terrible actions and paid a sum of money. The judge said that he would supervise him to complete his punishment. This incident was not reported much in the country. After all, their media rarely smeared their own people. However, some foreign sports media did not buy it. For example, China, which was protective of its own people, and the United Kingdom, which viewed equestrian competitions as sacred. They did not give Mr. Winfart any face. Sorry, but the International Equestrian Federation was also paying attention to this matter. Although they did not publicly express their views on Mr. Winfart, they publicly praised him after the trial. Yolashanda is an excellent racehorse, and Mr. Jia Sang is also an excellent rider. We look forward to their future performance. Many competition organizers cherish their reputation. If they wanted to maintain their style and class, they should ban some riders with bad names from participating. In the following years, Mr. Winfart was rejected by overseas competitions and could only compete in his own country. Therefore, Yolashanda's trip to the United States not only won a large sum of prize money, but also received a large sum of compensation. He was very satisfied. Originally, he wanted to rest for a few days and adjust his mood before going to the next stop. However, they soon received an invitation to a competition in Germany. Generally, competitions like to invite a certain champion to participate. This not only added class and class to their competition, but also contributed to the value of their championship. The 3 prize-winning horses had become famous recently. There were many riders who wanted to beat them, including the famous generals who participated in the competition with them last time. In fact, they did not feel that they had lost. They just did not plan their strategy well. If they could do it again, they might not lose to these few young riders. Yolashanda was very emotional when he received the invitation. He used to be a rookie who had to spend money to participate in the competition. At that time, he was so envious of the horses that the organizers spent money to invite. However, their partners did not seem to be very interested in this competition because it was also a speed competition. Yolashanda and Ao Daisai had already participated in 2 speed competitions in a row. There was no need for them to participate again. Daiwei, who had also received an invitation, was very excited. He was about to discuss the itinerary with his 2 friends when he was told that his friends were going to France to participate in the equestrian triathlon. It turned out that Yolashanda and Ao Daisai were originally from the equestrian triathlon. Later on, they joined the speed competition. He was simply stunned. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have dared to believe that there were such well-rounded horses in the world. Daiwei was very regretful that they could not go to Germany together. He felt that Xia would be very sad and a little flustered. Without Yolashanda and Ao Daisai, Xia would never run in front again. What should he do? With such worries, the three winners temporarily separated. The day before they left, they reluctantly said their goodbyes and had a lot of fun on the field. After that, Yolashanda and Ao Daisai went to France to pick up their old jobs. Xia went to Germany alone. During the competition in Germany, just as Dai Wei had worried, Xia was not in good condition. She did not gain anything from the trip to Germany. However, this was also very normal. Xia had only returned to her normal level. It could not be considered as regressing. After hearing the bad news from her friend over the phone, Yolashanda sighed. Actually, Xia had a lot of potential. She just lacked initiative and aggressiveness. She needed to be motivated. Of course, if Xia was an ambitious horse, her temper would not be so docile and obedient. How should he put it? It was a little regretful. Participating in competitions all over the world required a lot of money. If she could not get the prize money and investment, it meant that there would be no competitions to compete with. Sooner or later, Dai Wei would have to bring Xia back to his hometown. Dai Wei loved his horse very much. After losing in Germany, he was worried that Xia would be in a bad mood. Thus, he bought a ticket to fly to France. Yolashanda and Ao Daisai's competition had not started yet. Xia would definitely be very happy to be able to watch her friend's competition. That's right. This was Xia first time watching her friend's competition as a spectator. When Yolashanda appeared, he was even more excited than the spectators next to him. It seemed that the haze of losing the competition had been swept away. Perhaps it was because they had not been training the three equestrian disciplines recently, but Yolashanda and Ao Daisai's performances had regressed compared to before. On the surface, it looked like they had lost. However, only they knew that this was an adjustment and an attempt. They did not want to win every competition. Occasionally, they needed to look at themselves from another perspective. This was not only what Yolashanda and Ao Daisai needed, but also what the young Jia Seng needed. Coach Lee did not criticize them because of this. Instead, he hugged his two favorite students and told them, "Life is like a racetrack. We can not only win, but we can also lose. So, don't feel burdened. Regardless of whether you win or lose, it is an experience. Do you understand?" Jia Seng nodded. Yes, he had a strong desire for knowledge. So this was what it felt like to lose. He understood. Young Master Shui, who did not care about winning or losing, did not need anyone to comfort him. He saw himself as above the rules. Other people's judgment of winning or losing had nothing to do with him. After the competition, he prepared delicious food for the two horses. He comforted the couple just like how Coach Lee comforted Jia Seng. However, when he saw the two horses feeding each other fruits, he knew that the two horses did not need his comfort. Dai Wei was embarrassed. He thought that he had brought bad luck to his friends. If he had known, he would not have come so hastily. Jia Seng learned about Dai Wei's guilt through his brother's translation. He smiled at him and gave him a hug instead of words. He told Dai Wei not to feel guilty and that things were not like this. "Brother," he said that he was grateful for you bringing Xia here. They had a lot of fun and did not care about winning or losing. Dai Wei was touched. To be honest, he was also doubting himself. Could he still be as good as he was in that competition? Maybe life was full of ups and downs. After Jia Seng hugged Dai Wei, Shuelai said calmly, "I think I need a hug too. What do you think?" Jia Seng immediately opened his arms and jumped up to hug his brother. Like a child, he stuck to the person who had guided him step by step. In the end, he cried. After countless awards, he finally tasted the taste of failure. When the people around saw Jia Seng crying on Shuelai's shoulder, they suddenly realized that this guy was only a 16-year-old kid. Compared to the ups and downs of human emotions, the three horses who had won the prize, no, the three horses who had lost the competition were much more peaceful. They ate, drank, and had a lot of fun. The coach said that in order to adjust the condition of the riders, they will not participate in the competition for a month. "Good," said Xiao Little Bear. but they still have to train, reminded Ao Daisai mercilessly. Yulashanda put on a painful mask. Shouldn't they be on vacation in the Maldives in such hot weather? The author has something to say. You lost the competition and still dare to think about the Maldives. Chow Little Bear is indeed you. Chapter 253. Losing a match made everyone feel a sense of reality. Ever since Jia Sang and Yulashanda debuted, they had always achieved outstanding results. It almost made people wonder if they were the Emperor's star. Otherwise, how could they be so powerful? It was like a dream. Now, they had finally lost a race to a rider who was recognized as a strong rider. Their opponent was probably also a participant in the next Olympic Games. It was good to meet him in advance. Although Yulashanda and Ao Daisai did not get the prize money for that race, it was not like they did not gain anything. At least, they had figured out the strength of their future Olympic opponents. In the following period of time, Coach Lee used various methods to collect videos of the most powerful horsemen in the world. He let the two young horsemen watch the videos together with their horses. In fact, they didn't need to bring their horses. It was the two horses who wanted to watch the videos themselves. Yulashanda spent the morning watching videos of the races and the afternoon watching entertainment programs. Occasionally, she would squeeze out time to train. What was the reason for losing the race that day? Through the post-race review, the humans figured out that Yulashanda and Ao Daisai were not capable. Obviously not. They were just slacking off. Well, they had already participated in 2 races in a row. Perhaps they were already a little tired. Next, they did not want to be energized to compete for 3 days in a row. Therefore, the 1-month break was not only to adjust the condition of the riders, but also to adjust the condition of the horses. In general, people thought that losing the race was a good thing. It came at the right time. Hearing the humans' analysis, Xiao Qishi felt that it was very reasonable. She recalled how she felt when she participated in the race. Indeed, she did not feel the urgency to win. Instead, she was still immersed in the things that had happened not long ago. As for Ao Daisai, he probably just ran casually. He did not know why, but after some analysis, he did not want to work so hard. As a beast, he knew best how to arrange his exercise intensity. If he felt that it was not appropriate, he would not do it. If you wanted to win in the race, you had to be serious. That kind of exercise intensity was completely unnecessary for ordinary horses. In the end, he was slacking off and not being serious. Yulashanda guessed that Xia Yin was in the same situation. At that time, the other party had just finished a race and was not ready for the next race. Moreover, without their guidance, his heart was empty. How could he perform well? They left France for a holiday and training in a nice climate. During this period of time, the 3 horses were very happy. Jia Sang's mood was also very stable, but Dai Wei seemed to be in a state of anxiety. He couldn't sleep at night, and the next day, he had dark circles under his eyes and forced to smile with everyone. It was obvious that he had encountered a problem. Shuelai couldn't stand it anymore and asked him what was going on. Perhaps he could tell them and let them come up with an idea. Dai Wei smiled bitterly. Well, we received another invitation, but I'm not confident anymore. If I lose my ranking in the next competition, I don't think the organizers will be willing to invite me again. He didn't want to use up the halo of 3rd place so soon before he was sure that he could perform well. After listening to his senior's translation, Jia Sang expressed that he could understand Dai Wei's feelings. This was because he was afraid that he would perform poorly in the next competition. Shuelai was speechless. He had never felt like this before. The proud genius took a sip of coffee and put the cup on the table. Okay, put away your weak mentality. Don't think too much. As long as you feel that you're ready, go. Jia Sang and Dai Wei both said the same thing. The problem is that you're not ready. Cough, cough. They didn't know what to do next. After all, not everyone was like Shuelai, who was always full of confidence. The genius was speechless again. Why don't the 3 of us go together? Dai Wei felt that he had made a good suggestion. He was very confident. If we go together, Xia Yin will know how to run. However, Shuelai refused. We won't be participating in the speed competition again. Yolashanda and Ao Daisai were going to specialize in equestrian, so they only had one chance to compete with Xiaoyin. However, Shuelai still suggested that Dai Wei accept the invitation. It was now or never. As for the method to let Xiaoyin regain his confidence, it was very simple. Yolashanda and Ao Daisai could be his cheerleaders. He believed that with two good friends by his side, Xiaoyin would be full of motivation in the next competition. Dai Wei mustered up a lot of courage to make that request. He knew that it was too much and that he would be rejected. However, Yolashanda and Ao Daisai wanted to be Xiaoyin's cheerleaders. Was there a need to think about it? Of course, he agreed wholeheartedly. The riders discussed among themselves, and the news reached the ears of the three horses. Xiaoyin didn't count. Even if he heard it, he wouldn't understand. Two of the horses who knew what was going on whispered to each other. Yolashanda said, Ao Daisai, we lost the competition because we were lazy. We know this very well, right? Yes. Ao Daisai glanced sideways. In a world, only Yolashanda would be so arrogant about being lazy. Sigh. The other party sighed and frowned. Xiaoyin lost last time. I don't think he was lazy. He just couldn't win. What a worrisome child. Xiaoyin chewed on the ice cubes meekly as the two horses looked at him worriedly. He was very happy to be with his friends, even though Yolashanda had stolen half of his sweet ice cubes. Why don't we give him a surprise training session? Xiao Qishi suddenly had a whimsical idea. It wasn't that Xiaoyin couldn't win. He had potential, but he just wasn't familiar with how to perform at his best. Ao Daisai was stunned and looked at the sun outside. Now, Yolashanda also looked at the sun outside and changed his tone. What surprise training? We have to think about it at length. Let's talk about it at night. As for now, he was going to take a nap. The stables in this holiday manor were very comfortable. In this mild weather, there was a layer of clean hay under the stables. When lying down, he could even smell the scent of the hay. Normally, horses would only lie down when they were in a deep sleep. However, Yolashanda was different. Even if he didn't sleep, he wanted to lie down and be comfortable. It was good for horses to lie down and sleep, but it wasn't easy to turn over. If he wanted to turn over, he had to stand up and lie down again. Although the weather was neither too hot nor too cold, there were still some little bugs flying around, disturbing one's sleep. Xiao Qishi asked Ao Daisai to turn on the fan to blow the bugs away. Then, she said that the fan was too cold and should be turned off. However, when the fan was turned off, the bugs would come out and cause trouble again. It was really annoying. Annoyed by the bugs, Yolashanda kicked his hooves in his sleep. When Ao Daisai saw this, he used his tail to chase the bugs away. However, the tail wasn't very effective. There were too few spots that could be taken care of. Ao Daisai thought for a while, opened the door of the stables, and went out. The humans were waiting indoors. When they suddenly saw Ao Daisai visiting alone, they were a little surprised and didn't know what he wanted. Shuelai said, Ao Daisai, why are you here? However, the black horse did not pay attention to its rider. It walked straight into the room and looked around. Everyone could see that he was looking for something. Maybe it was food? Do you need some fruit? Jia Sang stood up with the fruits that the horses liked to eat. Ao Daisai looked at the fruits. Of course, he also wanted to bring them to Yolashanda, but this time, he wasn't here for fruits. Thus, he moved his eyes away and landed on a sofa with a blanket. That was what he was looking for. Everyone watched as Ao Daisai picked up the blanket and left. Ao Daisai returned to the stables and covered Yolashanda with the blanket. Then he turned on the fan. Perfect. With the blanket covering his stomach, Yolashanda wouldn't feel cold even if the fan was turned on. The humans in the room were still guessing. What was Ao Daisai doing with the blanket? Was the weather cold now? Jia Sang muttered, it's not too cold in the day, but it's still a little cold in the morning and at night. Everyone agreed. The problem was that horses were very resistant to cold. This difference in temperature was nothing to them. But who cared? It wasn't like they couldn't afford the blanket. If Ao Daisai wanted it, he could use it. At this moment, the handsome and vigorous black figure came over again. Yes, did he still need the blanket? but there was no more on the sofa. He had to go to the room to get it. No, Ao Daisai didn't want the blanket this time. He came for the basket of fruits on the table. Since the humans said that they would give it to him, it was his. Ao Daisai left with the basket of fruits, leaving the humans in the room looking at each other. Shuelai and Jia Sang, who knew that Ao Daisai and Yulashanda were a couple, suddenly understood. Perhaps, whether it was the blanket or the fruits, it was Ao Daisai who took them for Yulashanda. He was such a good boyfriend. Xiaoyin, who was in the stable next door, smelled the fragrance of the fruits and immediately stretched his neck to look around. He wanted to eat some of Yulashanda's fruits. Otis instinctively turned his head to the side to avoid the fruit. He did not want the other party to covet Alisanda's fruit. He paused for a moment, and, out of sympathy for the weak, he threw an apple into the fruit. He couldn't give more. In their stable, Yulashanda was sleeping soundly under the blanket. With the help of the fan, the little bug didn't disturb him anymore. Xiaoyin still wanted to eat the apple, but he was an obedient horse. Even if he wanted to eat, he wouldn't continue to stick his head out. From 2 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the 3 horses were sleeping. They only woke up in the evening. Yulashanda found a basket of fruits in the stable. He was so happy that he shouted, "Ao Daisai, look, there's a basket of fruits." Yulashanda gave the fruits to Ao Daisai and Xiaoyin, and they ate them together. After enjoying the fruit and afternoon tea, the sun was setting outside. They let Xiaoyin out and brought him to the pasture for surprise training. Ordinary racehorses ran based on their instincts, so excellent racehorses relied on talent. Only with talent would there be a future. Xiaoyin was also considered a talented horse, but his running style was not right. There was no complete system to let him know how to run slowly, how to run quickly, and how to run when he was sprinting. How could they let Xiaoyin know about this system? Of course, they had to guide him and let him slowly get used to the new running style, so that he would forget all his old habits. Yulashanda and Ao Daisai slowly led the way. They were not afraid that Xiaoyin would not get used to the new running style. After all, the new running style would make the horse feel more comfortable. As long as he tried it, he would get used to it. Everyone knew that Ao Daisai would open the stable door. Everyone also knew that Ao Daisai would sometimes take the initiative to run. But they did not know that Ao Daisai would steal the coach's job and bring Yulashanda and Xiaoyin out for training. Jia Sang tidied up the stable. As expected, he found the blanket in the stable, so he did not take it away, except to wash it. For the whole week, Yulashanda and Ao Daisai led Xiaoyin in training every evening. His improvement was visible to the naked eye. He should be able to run very well even if he were to compete alone. Time passed very quickly. A week later, they went to the city where the next race was held. The race that Dai Wei was invited to was a more commercial race. This meant that the prize money was very high. The downside was that it was not classy. Riders with style would not bother to participate. Dai Wei had only won 3rd place once, so he could not be considered famous. If he lost this race again, the racing world would quickly forget about this ordinary rider. So he treated this race very seriously and was very nervous. Jia Sang volunteered. In the past, every time Yulashanda competed, I would tie a beautiful and lucky braid for him. I want to tie one for Xiaoyin. Can I? Yulashanda raised both hands in agreement. Yes, yes, yes. A beautiful braid will bring luck. Dai Wei had also heard that Jia Sang came from a religious people. He gladly accepted his friend's blessings. On the night before the race, Jia Sang tied Xiaoyin's hair with a lucky buckle. It was very exquisite and beautiful. Xiaoyin was very affectionate. He lowered his head and rubbed Jia Sang's fingers. On the day of the race, Xiaoyin could no longer stay with his friends. When he was led by Dai Wei to the waiting area, he was obviously looking forward to Yulashanda and Ao Daisai running together. But they did not. His 2 companions stayed where they were and watched him. They did not follow him to the backfield. Xiaoyin's expectant eyes turned to disappointment. Perhaps he already understood that this was a solo race. Yulashanda and Ao Daisai would not run with him. He turned back several times on the way to the track. Xiaoyin, go for it. Yolashanda could not bear to see the child's expectant eyes fail. He suddenly raised his upper body and screamed loudly, encouraging him to win the race. Yolashanda's voice infected Xiayin. Every time Yolashanda could not run anymore during training, he would cheer them on. Xiayin blinked. Perhaps he understood. They did not turn back for the rest of the race. Xiayin led Dai Wei all the way to the track to prepare. Yolashanda and the others immediately went to fight for a good seat to watch the race. It was crowded outside the track. It was difficult to walk, and there was nowhere to stand. After all, who did not want a good seat to watch the race? The spectators who were squeezed out were unhappy and ready to complain. When they looked up, they saw a white and cute horse looking at them with its big eyes. Oh my God! His angry face immediately turned into a smiling face. He even wanted to touch it. Oh my dear, your eyelashes are so long. This person was intoxicated, and his good position was squeezed away. A large black horse stood between him and the little white angel, leaning against the wall. Although the black horse was also very handsome, his heart was completely captivated by the white horse he had just seen. The author has something to say. Today, I straightened out the outline. After this unit ends, the main body will be considered finished. Then, I will write a few chapters of 30,000 to 50,000 words. The animals that I have decided on are tigers, leopards, sheep, national treasures, snow foxes, and macaws. Festivals did not mean much to him, but there was good food and drink during festivals. So he liked festivals. Author has something to say. Yolashanda, look, this is the country that I have owned since I was young. It's endless. Are you jealous? Ao Daisai. Not at all. I have to do farm work. Yolashanda, QAQ, I'll bite you. Chapter 255. Anyway, Shuelai had nowhere to go. His parents were overseas all year round. If he stayed in the country, he would be spending his holidays alone. He might as well go sightseeing in the grasslands. Ao Daisai had heard Little Bear bragging to him more than once about the grasslands where he grew up. Little Bear even emphasized that it was different from the grasslands where a lion lived. Anyway, you haven't seen it yet. This piqued Ao Daisai's curiosity. What was a high-altitude grassland like? Was running on the grassland really as good as what Little Bear said? Not long after, they arrived at the grassland. The reason why it was described as grand was because Coach Lee came along with the provincial team's coaches. For a moment, Jia Sang's house was bustling with noise and excitement. A few days ago, Jia Sang's parents received news of their guest's visit. They were very happy. They immediately prepared food and horse feed to welcome the guests. They hadn't seen their son or the little white horse for a long time. Jia Sang's parents hugged them longingly. Seeing Jia Sang's father for the first time, Shuelai was very surprised. He had never heard his junior brother mention that his family's legs were disabled. For a moment, he felt a little sad because he and his junior brother had different life experiences. If he had been born in such a family, he might not have been as outstanding as Jia Sang. Ao Daisai also didn't expect that the family that Little Bear bragged about was actually very poor in the past. The stable they lived in couldn't be compared to the Blondes. Oh, he also saw the simple training ground. His heart instantly ached for them. Looking at Yolashanda, he didn't seem to think that the environment was bad. He had only wanted to go out to find Ao Daisai. Now that he had returned with Ao Daisai, he was having a lot of fun on the training ground. Ao Daisai, come and play. Ha ha, this is only 80 centimeters. Had Ao Daisai ever seen such a short hurdle? Okay. Ao Daisai calmed himself down and walked over to play with Yolashanda. Today, the other party had a small bell tied on his head, which jingled when he ran. He said that this was the only way to bring out the New Year's atmosphere. The humans were eating meat and drinking wine around the stove at home. From time to time, Laughter and rough singing could be heard. The two horses were playing outside. When they were tired, they would return to the stable to rest. Xiao Qishi looked at the darkening sky outside and told Ao Daisai to rest quickly. She would bring him to see the best sunrise tomorrow. The guests who came to the grassland drank until late at night. Of course, they did not have the chance to see the sunrise on the grassland. The next day, as soon as he woke up, he rode a horse to participate in the village activities. Shuelai was not used to the large number of people, and they had to dance and compete. Therefore, Jia Sang took him to see the frozen lake. It could be seen with the naked eye that the layer of ice was very thick. There were also traces of wheels on it, indicating that even a car could be on it. For the sake of safety, Jia Sang and Shuelai did not dare to try. They only dared to dismount from their horses and walk around the edge. Xiao Qishi, these two cowards. Of course, he did not dare to walk because the horse's hooves were not slippery. If only he had claws, he could walk freely on the ice. Horses must have good balance to walk on it. He suddenly wanted to tease Ao Daisai. Ao Daisai, do you dare to walk on it? The ice was Ao Daisai's happy home, but he looked down at his horse's hooves. It was indeed not suitable. Why did Yulashanda ask this? Ao Daisai thought that Yulashanda wanted to walk on the ice. He immediately blocked him with his body and chased him inland. He could not walk on it. It was too dangerous. The two boys became bolder as they played. They even slid on the ice. Ao Daisai turned to look at them. He was not very happy. This would attract the little bear to play too. Ao Daisai used his ability to take care of children and led Yulashanda to another place. When Jia Sang and Shuelai came back to their senses, they found that their horses were no longer on the shore. Where were their horses? The two humans looked at each other and finally walked 2 kilometers in the cold wind before they found their horses. This was Ao Daisai's punishment for them. The village's activities continued for several days. On the second day, there was a horse racing activity. Everyone could participate. When they heard that Jia Sang was back, a group of villagers invited him to participate. His horseman friends also came. The 2 professional horsemen did not know whether to laugh or cry. If the 2 of them participated, they would definitely be the winner. This was too unfair to the other contestants. However, they did not know that being able to race with them was even better than being the winner. In the end, they could not refuse the kindness and participated in the village's horse racing. Yulashanda was full of expectations. He began to listen to what the prizes were this time. When he heard that there were no prizes for horses or food, he immediately wanted to go home. However, Jia Sang held on to the reins tightly and did not let go. He told Ao Daisai, I'll just run casually. You could be the village champion this time. Ao Daisai narrowed his eyes and fell into deep thought. He thought, this is Little Bear's hometown. How can I run in front of Little Bear? After the race, neither of the 2 professional horses won first place. The horseman looked embarrassed and did not know what went wrong. Was it not used to the highlands? Nonsense. If the black horse was not used to the highlands, could it be that the white horse was not born and bred here? It could not have changed after being abroad for half a year.